TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D Wood. With me now, I've got a former Muslim named Emmanuel Shahid, and you're friends with, who are you friends with? You're friends with someone who put us in.
So far, I've met Brother Sam Shamoon. I've connected with him back in, gosh, what year? 2018. I was still living in Michigan, at the time, um, trying to sell things when I had my family. I was living in Michigan for a little bit, so I remember Sam Shamoon was coming up to teach at a church in Dearborn. So I said, "Hey, you're coming up. I'll meet you down there." So that's the only time I met. I met him, his two cousins. I forget
Wait,
the name
no,
of the.
no, you said someone put you in touch with me. Hang on.
Oh, with you. I'm sorry, Isa,
Oh,
brother.
Isa Kabir. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yes, yes. I met him through one of our brothers. He's a army veteran also. Gosh, now I forgot his YouTube
Isa?
channel.
Isa's a military guy?
No, not him. It's another. He comes into one of
Oh,
the brothers.
okay. I was about
Yeah.
to say, because Issa seems like he'd just, I don't want to fight, guys. I don't want to fight, man.
Uh,
Peace, peace, you and ITY.
I just pray for her. I hope he. I said, brother, what are you doing with Islam still? But he's good people. Yeah, we talk. He said he's in the process, trying to become a chaplain in the army. So I think he's going through all his paperwork process and everything. So yeah, so that's how I fuck. I remember he came on your live. So like, oh, so he's friends with them because you gave me the link when I sent you through the super chat.
Mhm.
Like I went to Acts 17, but somehow I don't know if it's from an older website and it keeps saying there's a flash that is not going through.
Hmm.
So I thought of like, oh, I saw Isa. Maybe I'll ask him for your email. So that's how everything got worked out.
And so our super, super nice Muslim friend, Isa, um, actually combination, he's a Jewish Muslim hybrid, and he put us in contact. And so you're a former Muslim, and we're interested in hearing former Muslim stories, especially now. This is interesting, especially because you left Islam before the avalanche of apostasy. You left Islam
Okay.
when almost no one was leaving Islam, where you could actually sit back and say, okay, how many ex-Muslims can I think of? And you could count them on one hand, like in the world. There were more, but they tended to be really, really quiet back then. And so the ex-Muslims who were actually going around speaking in public, there was like three or four of them back then. And so wasn't a big thing back then. But yeah, before we talk, um, yeah, before your conversion, why don't you give us some background onto where you're from, growing up, all that stuff.
Absolutely, brother. Well, as you guys know, I go by the name of Emmanuel Shahid now, but before that, my original birth name was Shah Abul Qasim Shahid. Those good old long Arab names. But that was my original name. I was born and raised
Which
in New Jersey.
means which means fire of Allah who rains down upon the kuffar.
I am the great Shah. That's how we. So my father took pride because of our family tree. So I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. My grandparents were born during the time of British India, and then of course after the separation, my father was born during East Pakistan, moving on to present day Bangladesh. So I would say growing up, it was unique. And we were definitely. My father was definitely very religious, like hardcore Islam. Like my my father and some of our other family members, they in those days in the 80s and the 90s, I'm pretty sure even before then, like I have uncles that my great uncle came through the States around the 70s going to college. And so they sponsored my mom and dad at the time to come to this country. And from the story, like my father told me, I don't know how that worked out. My mom was pregnant with me when they came to the States. I think about 3 months later I was born. So I don't know how that worked out. They said they paid some extra fee. They wanted me to be the first in the family to be born in the States. It's like I don't know about that, but whatever it is, I thank God the way how everything worked out. And but growing up, brother, definitely Islam played a big role in our home. Like for myself, I want to say that it's different for Muslims in the West. It's almost like it makes you bipolar. because you're definitely religious because of the way that you're brought up. You have to defend that religion because the way we were programmed and taught that Islam is the only way. It is the absolute truth. We believe in the pure oneness of God. The Jews distorted God's word. The Christians distorted everything. They're all pagan worshippers. So that's how I was programmed to believe. And
And by the
and
way, I just wanted to point out because it's very important for people to understand that I was recently having a discussion with Hatun Tosh, and she was
yeah,
pointing out that Islam is like polemics are built into the system. Just
yes,
yeah, it's built into the system to attack other positions. And she was pointing out that it's built into Christianity to defend your position, but not to attack. And so she's pointing out that one of the difficulties that Muslims are having with dawah now is that they're not used to having to defend. They're used to people being ignorant about they're used to people being ignorant about their position, which allows them to just focus on attacking. And then when they're forced to defend some position, they feel uncomfortable. But it's kind of the reverse for Christians that Christians feel comfortable doing apologetics, defending the deity of Christ and so on.
absolutely.
Christians start getting uncomfortable when they start having attacking other positions, and so that's why, like, we're just mentioning like early 2000s when Christians started going after Islam, we got blasted. Not just by Muslims, we got blasted by Christians. Like, what are you doing attacking their position? Just defend the gospel. Just defend the gospel. But you're pointing out, it's like even when you're young, this is like it's programmed into you to be blasting away. You guys have all these problems. You Jews, you Christians, you have all these problems, and we're going to expose all your problems.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you everything about within the inner circle that goes in. Like even before my father brought up about who God was, it's a funny story behind the how the topic came. Like most of the family, I guess they will start talking about to the kids. Maybe they try to wait till 6, 7 years old. And here's a funny thing. I remember my mom said, "You better eat your food, or Allah's going to punish you." And I said, "Allah? Who's Allah?" I swear. I said, "Well, guess what? Allah can kiss my." I said that. I
Whoa, whoa.
This is when I had the big talk. My mom got my dad. All right, son, it's time to know where we come from. So when he laid down about who Allah is, the oneness of God, he mentioned about our ancestral line. Being a Shah was a big ordeal. According to the traditions from my family, our ancestors came from either through Turkey or Yemen. I believe they played a big role during the Abbasid period, during the migration, spreading Islam. So they settled in the Bengal area. Now, it's hard to tell when you hear Muslims' ancestral story, it's almost like this sounds like a folklore. Tradition says that the name Shah Jahan, I'm sorry, not Shah Jahan. Yes, Shah Jalal. I'm sorry, Shah Jalal. Shah Jalal was a Sufi saint. So it's weird how we became Sunnis, but our ancestors were Sufi Muslims that migrated through the Bengal area. They spread Islam, and that's what they made a big ordeal. My own father said that we have a special seat on Judgment Day because we come from the Qurayshi, according to the Qurayshi line.
Uh, hey, that's funny because I used to mess with Nabil like that. So Nabil's name was Nabil Qureshi, and he pointed out, and this means I'm from the tribe of Muhammad. And I was like, come on, man. Anytime any of you guys were moving around in the back in the day, and you move from one area to another area, you just make that name and say, "Oh yeah, we're from the Prophet's tribe or the Prophet's family or something like that." So yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
yeah. Now it's funny because I had no reason to think that he wasn't from the tribe. It was just a way of messing with him and stuff. But yeah.
Everybody wants that special status. Oh, I'm from Muhammad's tribe. I'm special.
And by the way,
That's
it's actually funny because in the Quran and the Muslim sources, they made fun of the pagans for being like that, right? Like that's a famous quote when Muhammad said, if anyone brags about his descent in the manner of the pagans, tell him go bite his father's penis. And he said, and don't use a euphemism. Don't use a euphemism. And so he's like, haha, you're just stupid guys bragging about your lineage and stuff like that. But it's a huge issue for tracing yourself back to some great Muslim figure or to something associated with Muhammad and so on.
yeah. Because I did the DNA test just for the heck of it at the time when I was when I was still married at the time. My mother-in-law did the DNA test for us, and it's weird. They said my DNA traces I got a bunch of people from China, the Samoans, parts of Asia, but somehow I don't know. They said it's weird. The whole the ancestry.com. And another website that they use, I think, is 124 something or 24 Me, I think it's called. A lot of
23andMe.
Yeah, 23andMe. They fluctuate, but so far none of my ancestor traces from my side for the least from the Middle East, but they say fluctuate. But mostly of them is all from Asia. So I'm thinking either I'm pretty sure historically the Turks came because I read from the historical point of view, Turks did invade, which is present day Bangladesh today and the Bengal region. And so they ruled that area and brought Islam over there. Either my ancestors were Dhimmi, they're probably Hindus or Buddhists, and we're forced into it. That's the way I look at it. So, growing up, it was a big ordeal. Like, my father tried his best to protect for us not to walk in the ways of the infidels because I always hear them talk trash against the West, even during the time when the war broke out in 1990. And as a kid, you're still in your innocence. You're listening to them like, okay, all my friends watching TV, Allahu Akbar, defeat America, go Saddam Hussein. And as a kid, I'm thinking like, wait a minute. So why am I even here? So I brought an honest question to my father, like, why are we trashing this country, but we're here? And they give you that most honest answer. Like he told me, look, son, the only reason we're here is just to make money. We're not here to conform to their ways. We don't have any other choice. But inshallah, one day this land will become Islam. So they talk about their whole goal, how they want to Islamicize this country. But as a nominal Muslim growing up, like we didn't talk about these kind of deep things in the Quran. And this is why many Muslims I would say in the East, they make fun of the Muslims in the West because they're afraid of if the Muslims are growing up here, is gonna mess up their name. So this is why they want to push all this either through immigration policy or by illegal immigration. They just want to flood with Islam because these Western Muslims, they're going to screw things up. So this is the way how their mindset was. So I'm going to the mosque, like when I'm not growing up, just like any Muslims you hear, we're taught the Quran. First, what they did was they taught us the back portion of the Quran. Now, I'm not sure if there's any Middle Eastern brothers here, if they follow the same. So they call it the Sipada. The Sipada is what they teach you first, all the short verses of the Quran, just the out.
Nabil told me the exact same thing. He said they went to like camps, and so like other kids go to like Boy Scout camps. They went to like Quran camps, and you go to the Quran camp, and so he could recite all the short surahs even years later. Short surah would come up, and he would fire it off.
That's a lot of Muslims know. You know how they act like, oh, we memorize that. Half the Muslim, even right now, even my family right now, I don't think they even know half the Quran. They'll take the easy verses just to use it for their prayer. So this is what they taught. We have what they call in the early 80s and 90s. It says in Newark, either they used to go to Patterson, or they used to get some preachers from out of Patterson, New Jersey. It gets a heavily Bengali and Palestinian Muslims out there in Patterson, New Jersey. So they'll get some preachers out there to Newark. And so we're reading the Sipar in Arabic, but nobody's explaining to us. So because the level of fear in those days, I would never forget the Imam told us, you are not allowed to explain the Quran. If any of your friends tell you anything about the Quran or just want to know about Islam, you are not allowed to answer it, but you get to one of us. The level of fear, they think that because since they can't see Allah, they take the Quran literally, like this is literally God's word. I'm talking to Allah. You even read the wrong way of the Arabic word, you could either get beaten, and all of us got the beaten when we read it wrong, spelled it wrong. So it was serious about that. So all they just force us to read in Arab. So I'm like, okay, I want to know God. Like since I was 6 years old, like ever since my father sat me down trying to bring us where we come from, I always have this eager to know where we come from. So, and I always felt like, even at a young age, even though I was still lost, brother, I always felt like God had a hold in my life. So I went about my business, trying to be the best Muslim that I can be. I tried my best. I'm reading the Quran. I'm trying to read it well. And I started reading that at, I believe, around 7 years old. By the time I was like maybe 8 or 9, we keep reading Arabic every week, but nobody is trying to tell us, all right, come here, say this, alif, ba, ta, sa. Now learn the diacritical marking, alif, zubar, ba, zubar, ba. See, all they teach you is just sound, 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 but no understanding. So one day we had this dawah, some dawah crew came by. I think there was 2 or 3 men. They're like Pakistani or Afghani background. And I remember he's watching the Imam teaching us. Hearing us what we're reading. And all of a sudden he said, "Does anybody have any question?" All of a sudden I was eager. We keep forced to read in Arabic. I said, Imam Saab, I have something to say. So I appreciate you telling me that I'm reading the Arabic well. I'm learning well. I have no idea what it says. Can you explain to me? Do you know what this guy told me? And this is why all these. His answer was, brother, don't worry about understanding. As long you read it, Allah understands what you're saying. You don't have to understand it. Now go back to your corner and sit down. Not the answer that I was looking for, but this is what they tell you. So they just want to force you to read it. You don't have to understand it. As you make it sound right, oh, Allah will accept it. Just keep reading it. If you need some extra credit prayer, read Surah An-Nisa, some other couple other Quranic passages, to get the barakah and the blessing. So I'm just like, okay, because I'm not allowed to question Allah. If question something else, I could get punished by it. So all of a sudden, the fear of God, the way that Islam portrays it, is just like it scared me. Sometimes, like when I see the Christians, I'm just like, man, what do they have? It seems like they have a good life, just thoughts that I ponder. Now, as a kid, I used to think that everybody was a Muslim. I first encountered a Christian was he's one of my best friends today, and he works for the Border Patrol, and we were in third grade. One day we were just talking about God. I don't know. He said, I believe in Abraham. Really? So do I. So we start talking about the basic prophets. But at the time, I was in third grade. I thought everybody was a Muslim. That's what my mindset was. Then all of a sudden he told me, wait a minute, I'm a Christian. Wait, what? Christian? What's that? I'm a Muslim. So why is that we believe in the same prophets and we're a different religion? So I go home to my father. I got excited, finding someone that believes in God. I said, Dad, guess what? I found somebody that believes the same prophets we do. But I'm confused. Why is that they're Christians and we're Muslims? I would never forget like it was yesterday. My dad's eyes was wide open, like he got angry. Don't you hang around with them. They're all going to hell, and that's it. They don't explain to you why. They just tell you don't do it and no explanation. But of course, I still hanged out with him. So that was my first encounter seeing that side of a Christian love. I didn't understand. And I remember I was at my friend's house, and his mom was like, do you like to stay over for dinner? I said, sure, I don't mind at all. And then we were sitting down, and his mom, my friend, mom told me, if you don't mind, in our home, we like to pray, like an opening prayer for food. Is that okay if we say that? And, I'm just a child. I'm just open minded, like, sure. And that's the way how I see how they worship God. At the time, I didn't understand who Jesus was at the time. Nobody, when I was growing up, they didn't even try to bring the news about who Jesus was. I found that out later on when I met another Dawa, which I will explain. But in that portion, this is when I witnessed a side of love that I never seen from a Christianity. Just the way how they carry themselves. Because in our family, or even in the Muslim community, they talk the big talk. Oh, we believe in Allah. We have the absolute truth. But yet, in the inner circle, everybody's fight among each other. When there's some problem going on, say if somebody's sick, they have money issue. Ya Allah, what am I gonna do? Oh my gosh, I need this medicine. I gotta do something. I said, where's your faith? You guys tell me about having faith in Allah, but all of a sudden you guys are losing your faith. So I'm like, okay, like life goes on. Like when my father passed on, like my father died of asthma attack when I was 14. We're still doing any worldly things. The guys at the mosque, we just go there, just make sure we get our blessings. After we get out, even all the Muslim guys that I grew up in the community, they're messing around with girls, they're doing their drugs and drinking. At least I would say, because I try my best not to do all these things, and not to mess around with women. Because my father even taught us that you can't, you got to wait till when you get married. But no one ever told us that what we know today in the Quran that they hid from us about the right hand position. Nobody ever talked about that. And this is the problem with the Muslim community. Like we push, we keep asking that we want to know, but the more you push these questions, like the imams will get mad, and which I will explain further down about during the time of 9/11 and everything. But as time went on, I'm just going about my business. My father passed away. I'm trying to live a good life. I memorized as much as I know from the Quranic verse. I didn't memorize all of it. Uh, Doing my prayer. But one thing I noticed, like even at a young age, I feel like I didn't know what the answer was, but I always feel like God had to grab a hold of me. Like something wasn't right in Islam, but I was afraid to ask these questions. If I ask Allah a certain way, or even my thought process, the level of fear trembles me. So this is why when many Muslims don't give you the answer right away, and you get all the tap dancing, because the way that we're brought up is if you if you agree with the non-Muslim, if you agree with the kafir, Allah will punish you, or the community can beat you or unalive you. That's how serious it is. Or if you if you try to explain a common sense error from the Quran, but because since you can't see Allah, you have to rely on the Quran as the closest thing to Allah. You cannot even question it. So this is why they do all the tap dancing. And that's the level of fear I went through. I had friends tell me, if you believe that Allah can do whatever He wants, don't you think He could come like us? Of course, and at that time, in the back of my mind, my common sense tells me yes, but I would not tell them in front of their face because now the fear is coming into me. Oh snap! I can't tell Allah in that type of way. Allah's going to punish me. That's what I would say internally, and that's what many Muslims are going through even right now. They may not tell you, but I know how they think like that. It's
There
such a
there is that is a that's a very important issue, especially I mean, again, you're talking way back in the day.
back in the
But
days. Yeah.
but right now where it's got to be more difficult for because now they're bombarded with all this stuff about Muhammad that their leaders aren't telling them. But it's the similarity between now and back then is that someone can ask for a clarification just because they don't know, they don't understand something, and so you want to ask someone who understands more than you. So if you're young and you have a question or something like that, you ask, your religious leader or something. But that can come across in two different ways. One, this person's just trying to understand, or two, this person's doubting. This person is being consumed by doubts, and that seems to be the concern in the Muslim community. Is on the one hand, if this person's asking questions, hey, why would Allah do this? Why would Allah do that? It's like, oh, this person's going down a very dangerous road of questioning all this stuff, and if this person keeps going down that road of questioning all this stuff, he's going to leave Islam. So that's from the perspective of the actual leader. Why is this person asking all these questions? Is he doubting? Is he listening to the unbelievers and they're infecting his mind with all this stuff? But also from the perspective of the Muslim understand, the young Muslim understands, hey, when I ask these questions, I'm going to come across as a doubter. So I don't want to be the doubter in the community. So I'll just I'll have to
Exactly.
keep quiet.
And that's very sad. Like, it's like, how am I supposed to get my point across? How am I supposed to share the word? And then, oh, before my father died, while he was still alive, I remember like around 13, first time I ever met a white guy who was a Muslim. And that is the guy that I found out that we believe in Jesus. So until now, nobody in the community told us that we believe in Jesus as a prophet. And honestly, when I heard that, I was like, I got excited. Like, wow, really? Muslims believe in Jesus? So what is he to us? Oh, brother, he's a prophet. I love when Caucasian Muslims trying to sound like they're Arab. Oh, brother, he's a prophet, brother. Like
Ah, yahi, yahi.
I was thinking of that guy, the current Caucasian guy that he's having issues with Mohammed hijab right now. That they're clashing right now. It's like
Oh,
these guys.
Sajid Lipham. Yeah, yeah.
That's like, yeah, I swear he reminded me of him. Like me and my cousin. South Asia Arabs. Like, oh my gosh, we're like these third world countries. Oh my God, look, it's a white Muslim. That is so cool. So I heard it from his mouth. No, brother, we believe in Jesus. He's a prophet. Like, and when I heard that, for me, that made me happy because every time I hear from the Christianity side, like, gosh, their Jesus sounds pretty cool. Of course, I would have said about it, just the way how they carried themselves. I feel like they have this sense of freedom, but they restrict us from everything to hang out, to talk to them, um, or if any. Many times we talk so much smack against the Christians. We're hanging out in the block. Some Christian guy walk up, so what you guys talking about? Like, I want to know your faith. All of a sudden, everybody's quiet. They don't want to bring that up or challenge the Christian guy. But there are many times, brother, like I would come across, we see like street preachers around our area in Newark. It was a diversity of people. Um, I remember also somebody handed me about. I was going to school. They handed me a Bible, and I would say out of all my family, brother, though yes, I talked against Christianity because I was brought up, but yet at the same time, I was always open minded. I try to hear their perspective, or because I don't want to disrespect them. Like, okay, I hear them. Okay, fine, I'll take the Bible. So I came home from school. I forgot that I had the Bible. My father looked at me. What is that in your hand? Oh, don't worry, Dad. I just want to make sure that the Christian guy don't bother me. I just said I'll take the Bible and don't bother. My father freaked out. Now let me tell you. I'll tell you this. I don't know how. other Muslim communities are, and that's the problem within the Muslim community. Every whoever the imams are, they always get these different teaching. My father told me that the moment you open the Bible, you got to get a voodoo spell on you. If you try to walk in the church, a jinn is going to jump on you. So this is the level of fear that they teach them to avoid them not to read the Bible. So I just like I didn't know my he's freaking out. My dad is freaking out. I'm freaking out. Like okay, dad. So I just ripped the Bible and tossed it outside. I mean I didn't know at the time. I was just a teenager at the time. But these are the kind of the issues that I begin to see. I begin to see in my community. We've seen a lot of Afghanis coming into our community because I know during the Cold War, a lot of Afghanis came as refugees. So I came across different sects of Islam. We had a large Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Afghanis, Gujaratis, Punjab. They call our little area the United Nations in that section of Newark. You have every melting pot in that little block. So I've seen some Afghanis. Some of them want to do the right thing living here. Some of them still have ties to the Taliban's. Growing up, I seen the FBI's and the CIA's coming through our neighborhood, and we wonder, well, what are they trying to do? Of course, at the time, thinking like, hey, but just trying to pick on the Muslims. But I realized, I feel like they're not giving me the direct answer. So of course, I have to be in defensive mode. Thinking like today's woke mindset. Oh, they're picking on me. Boo me. I'm the victim. Why are they picking on the Muslims? And about the Jewish teaching also too. So my father told me that because out of all the non-Muslims, they despise the Jews so much. They never explain why. They just say they're the most dirtiest people. And so they tell you is if you want a quick way to heaven. So we know that in Islam we have no guarantee of salvation. So three options they tell you for salvation is either one, if you're a son, your mother and father is the key to heaven. If you're a daughter, your husband is the key to heaven. So this is why you see many women goes through abuse. So if they say something the wrong way to their husband and they don't get forgiveness, that's it. They're going to hell. Same way as a man, if my parents don't forgive me, even though we still don't know of our assurance, but that's another closest thing. If you don't if your parents don't forgive you, that's it. You're going to hell. But the third option is if you really, really want to get to heaven, if you can unalive a Jew, that's it. You're guaranteed for heaven if you unalive a Jew. So when I see what happened on October 7th, brother, it reminds me of the story of Khaybar in the Hadith. They did exactly what they did in that town. I saw some of the dark videos. It really disgusted me. And this is the reason why, as I grew over the years, I looked more in depth into Islam. What they're taught us, it just disgusted me even more. So I was forced to read it in Arabic from age 7 until I got my first copy of the English Quran at 15. This is when the internet began to grow. I used to go to the Yahoo chat rooms and the religious chat room. This preacher said, and I'm getting heated. I'm seeing all these Christians bashing at Islam. I mean, forget about censorship in those days. They went hardcore. Screw Islam, F Muhammad, this. How dare them talk about
Mm-hmm.
I don't use your little accent, something. How dare them? So this pastor said, "You do know in your Quran it teaches about violence." I said, "No, it doesn't." I'm like this typical Muslim. Islam is peace, man. How dare you say that? So when I got the English copy, I said, "You know what? This is my chance to read it." And this is another issue too. They told us it's untranslatable, but then again, once again, don't question Allah. Look, I know it's for the Arab, but you still have to understand why we did it that way. Don't question it. Fine. So I got the English translation of the Quran. I'm reading along, because of the level of fear. Whenever I read the Quran, at the time I wasn't using my critical thinking. I'm just shivering as I read. I got to make sure, even in the English translation, I got to make sure I'm reading it in the proper way. So as I'm reading along, the first couple of chapters, I'm like, okay, sounds pretty good. But I see some violence, verse 2. That doesn't sound right. Beat them, kill them. I'm thinking about of course, that tells during the wartime. But when I came across Surah 9 is like, when I saw Surah 9, verse 529, I'm like, what? Kill the Christians and Jews? Like, right off the back, my common sense tells me, hold up, is this what I think is saying? I thought we were the religion of peace. Then all of a sudden in Surah 5 and Surah 3, don't be friends with the Christians or Jews, for if you're friends of them, then you're an enemy of Allah. Once again, my common sense tell me, so how am I supposed to preach Islam to them? If I can't be friends with them, what's the point of me preaching it? And I remember I asked my dad and the imam, can you please tell me if I'm reading this right? Oh, this is just during the wartime, This is when, they picked on Muhammad, Of course, I'm trying to go by their feel good answer. I said, okay. But whenever I come across the same passage, whenever I'm just in my personal time reading, I don't know why, every time I read that verse, I get disgusted by it. There are times I would intentionally just read it in Arabic just to ignore it in English for what it says. So I'm like, okay, I'm going about my business. I got the English copy, but still, I go through life every day. I'm going doing my 5 time prayers. I didn't do as much like my father did. Like I respected my father, for trying to instill me who God was. I would watch my father do his 5 time prayers daily. He read his Hadith, his Quran, how he understands it. I began to see a little changes in my dad, like before he passed away, because back then he was hardcore. I remember my dad said straight up, maybe he just tried to give me an assurance. He told me that, son, if you ever leave Islam, I will personally take you out. I'm like, okay, don't worry, Dad. I'm not gonna leave. Allah is one. And I don't know why. I feel like he just had to say that to put, just to put assurance into it.
Yeah.
Uh,
By the way, it's you have stuff like that in the Muslim sources. So you have Surah. Me and Brother Rashid just did a live stream. We were talking about Surah 58 verse 22, and it was saying that if you're a real Muslim, you wouldn't have love even for your own family members, for your own father, for your own son, for your own tribe, if they are against Allah and Muhammad. So if they reject
yeah,
Islam, you have in Surah 3 where he says that where where Allah only has love for people who accept Islam. You have to accept Islam. You have to accept Muhammad as a prophet first, and then Allah will love you. And so you have those kinds of issues. And then there's in the Sirah where Abu Bakr would have killed his own son if they had met in combat and so on, because his one of his sons was on the other side. And so you have all these kinds of issues in the Muslim sources. Um, and then Muhammad said, carry out Allah's punishments even against your own family members. That's in Sunan Ibn Majah. So it's you can justify taking out your own family members and so on. Fortunately, most people are just they're just talking to scare someone, because you don't want people actually doing that. Did want to actually pause real quick for Nabil Hantuli here, who says Islam is the only right religion.
sure, buddy.
Hey
Yeah,
Nabil. Hey
yeah.
Nabil. We're going to give you an opportunity right now. Give us your best reason for believing in Islam as the only right religion. Give us your best one.
Exactly. Allah is one is their only thing. It's not good enough. and And this is the main thing. Their argument is just Allah is one. Like they don't want to question anything. Like they say they believe in all the prophets too. Like I see in the Bible, in the Quran. I'm sorry, the Quran, the prophets. But I don't know. I don't really know nothing about them. In Islam, they teach you that the prophets are sinless, because just because they hold the title, they're prophets. They're sinless. They have access to God. We're just nominal people. We're slaves of Allah. Like we don't have any type of communication. Even when you're doing your namaz, you're not even sure of your assurance. So I have to live with that fear daily. And there are times whenever I miss my prayer. So in Islam, they have a thing that if you miss your prayer, you got to do what they call a makeup prayer. If I do my Asr or my Maghrib prayer, okay, Allah, I'm now going to do my prayer that I missed on September 11, 2001, Lord. Yes, the day when your fellow guys came on the tower. I missed that prayer, so I'm making up for that one. Like, how can I keep number of that? I can't keep count of that. I don't know how much sin that I did. So I'm relying on whatever the Allah will tell me on Judgment Day on my scale. Another thing that I keep questioning about Islam is, as I seen the terrorist attack happen a lot in the 80s and 90s, and here we are, we're trying to defend that we're the religion of peace, and I'm just looking at the news a lot. Why are we doing all these attacks over there? Like, no, because they're trying to take our religion away. They're trying to take Islam from us. So these are the excuses they'll come with. And back in Patterson, now to the part of Patterson about the first World Trade Center attack, and I did not know the guy who was the mastermind of the first World Trade Center attack. I met him when I was 10 years old. I had no idea that was him. My father called me, "Hey, look, it's that guy for our guest speaker from the Patterson Mosque." Like, get the heck out of here. Like I still remember like it was yesterday, like where I was sitting at, everybody's coming up to the blind sheik like he's some type of holy guy. My father, of course, oh, assalamu alaikum, kissing his hand like he's some righteous guy. But all of a sudden he's in the news. So this is why I always, there's times I did have doubt. Of course, I didn't know how to explain it to my parents. I just have to follow it blindly. But I'm like, we are always on the news a lot. Like, what is going on? So as times went by, brother, trying to live my life. My father passed away at 14. So my mom was afraid that I might become too Americanized, and I was going through a lot of stress. I was very, you could say, I was very introverted. I didn't want to express a lot of things what I was going through. One day, my mom said, "Hey, why not go to Bangladesh for 2 months? Just get your mind off." I said, "You sure you're not gonna trick me, send me out there for a year?" I'm like, no, 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 son. So I go there, I take her words for it. I get there, my mom calls me, guess what? You ain't coming back till next year. I had so much anger towards my mom, the animosity that I had. But when I look back in my life, brother, I think about the story of Joseph, how his own brother sold him to slavery. How he said, what, it's messed up, it is,
Well,
like,
I'm actually laughing because it reminded me of something else. I was young. I was, I don't know, 7 or 8, and my dad used to do rappelling, where he'd go down the side of a cliff, and he got me to actually go rappelling. And I got over the edge of the cliff, and it's like, I don't know, 100 feet down to rocks at the bottom, and it's just a cliff. And he's got me all hooked up, and he's like, "Yeah, just lean back, just lean back." And I start leaning back, but you've never done this before. I'm leaning back, I'm looking down. It's weird because I normally do all kinds of stupid, crazy stuff back then, but I look down at just rock at the bottom of this 120 foot cliff and stuff, and I go, "I'm not going down here." He goes, "Look, take 2 steps back, and if you want to come back up, I'll pull you back up." And I took two little steps, and I go, "Pull me back up." And he goes, "The only way you're getting off this rope is at the bottom." And I was like, "Oh man!" But it was that same thing that, you can come back, you can come back. Wrong, trick me.
How dare you, Dad? So I get that. What? I was so angry at my mom for that. But you know what? Here I am. I'm trying to make sure I have to become religious for this. So they try to instill me in Islam. They want me to fulfill my father's dream. They want me to be like this future Islamic preacher. That was their goal. So, okay, I'm trying my best to live my life, being there for a year, maybe God showed me, I seen a different side of how Islam is. I've seen a lot of racism over there towards Hindus and Christians, but I also came across certain Muslims that are nominal. I met a guy in my father's village. There was an actual ex-Muslim I met. He's
Hmm.
like the first Muslim I met, but at the time, even they're hanging out with their buddies. They all know he's an ex-Muslim. But he was this atheist. He became an atheist. He's like, where's Allah? I don't see Allah. And we're just hanging out talking. I'm like 15 years old. Like, really? Is that possible to not believe in Allah? But of course, because in that community, they can't just go out there and tell everyone. Certain people might know about their if they're ex-Muslim or not. So he was the first guy I met in the village who didn't believe in Allah. But I try my best. Like my uncle would have a private tutor. I tried the madrasa. These people are so disgusting of the brother. They tell us that we're being the bad ones. I go to the madrasa, and these students coming up to me like, "Hey, you think if I come to America, I could get me a white girl out there?"
Mm.
Hold on, man. Is this what you guys think all day?
Yep.
Like, I think you guys are the most holiest people that my mom tells me. You guys are even more perverted. Like, I did not want to go there, bro. So my uncle said, "I'll get you a private tutor." Even a lot of people know these madrasa students can be very, I don't know, they're very deceptive, because lately I did find a report. There's been in Bangladesh, lot there. I think there was a sting operation. They caught a lot of imams sodomizing children, not only
Mm.
just girls, but boys also too. So whenever Muslims argue about, oh, what about the priest, this and that, I said, we're not denying, we go by what the word of God said. If they're doing anything against God, we'll call them out. But you guys are literally doing that. You know, your Quran says you could do all these crazy things, but even if they don't, you're just more disgusting. There's a lot of imams that sodomizes children, like in Bangladesh and Pakistan, parts of India, in the Middle East. They do all that. So I had a private tutor, so I have to go back, read the Quran all over again. And it's just the same thing. They don't teach you anything, brother. It's like there's no type of like, who am I worshiping? Just read this, you'll be fine. He collects his fee that my uncle gives him, call it a night. So I'm doing what I can to come back home to the States. So I did learn a lot as far as culturally. I seen the side of the world of Islam. I see how they talk about the Muslims in the West. They think that we're being distorted. They're gonna screw things up for Islam. We have to do whatever we can to bring more people there so the new generation don't mess things up. I guess they didn't realize the power of the internet that was coming on later on in life. So after a year, I came back, like trying to live a holy life. But, after that, I just went back to my ways, like hanging out with my friends. I did fell into temptation, like drinking alcohol sometimes, smoking weed, and knowing that they were bad. I mean, I feared God so much. Like, why am I even doing this? I know it's wrong. And even when cursing at people, there's like, I know they're wrong. Why am I doing this? I try my best to be right with Allah, so it was on and off, so I still had more problems with family at home. At one point my mom tried to force me into marriage even at 16 because they're worried about me fornicating. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I was against arranged marriage. And I did forgot to mention, yes, they will tell you straight up, child marriage is okay. My father had a sit down with me and my sister. In our culture, you can marry at 6 years old. Your grandmother was 10 years old when she got married. What the hell? Me and my sister are disgusted hearing this. That shows you that, as the Bible says, that it's just something about children in their innocence that they can easily know that something is wrong. Even though I did not have the answer, I was so uncomfortable with it. And even with child marriage, how do I defend something like that? I get these questions a lot. Can you do that? Muhammad did all that. So when I began to read the English translation, my father also, before he passed away, he got me a copy of Sahih al-Bukhari uh, in the English translation. And even at the time of conversion, I didn't read it all. I had enough information to know that it was a problem in it. But now 9/11 happens. As time went on, brother, trying to do something with my life. The Islamic community, there was just always on and off of bickering about living peaceful life, um, trying to defend Islam, but at the same time, if you're doing something wrong, so it's a problem with the community. I'm pretty sure many Muslims right now that lives in the West, they may not try to tell you right away. I'm pretty sure they see that in the inner circle, and that's the problem. It's like nobody talks about the depthness of Islam. My mom doesn't know much. My mom doesn't know how to read and write Bengali or in the English language, so she has to rely on what the preacher says. And when I try to explain my mom about what I discovered, she didn't want to hear about that. So it was a struggle. So 9/11 happens, brother. Like at that time, I always wanted to
What?
serve my
One second,
country.
one second, one second, one second, one second, because apparently some of this is new information. We have Mariano here. Oh wait, so I just took down the tweet of who was it? Nabil, who said that Islam is the only true religion. Did we ever get a response to that, ladies and gentlemen? Because I was looking for one, I didn't see one. Keep in mind, he said Islam's the only true religion. Literally offered him the opportunity on a Christian channel. Give us your best reason. Did he give us one? Because I didn't, or did he post it and then when he's offered the opportunity, did he just run? Which did he do? Which one? Because that's weird. So that's one weird thing. Then we have Mariano here. Wait, child marriage is okay? So it's apparently there are still people who
Yes,
don't know what Islam teaches.
that's why it's so important what we do, brother. Like I knew there was that many ex-Muslim representative. Like I always feel like there's got to be more. It was just like I seen you, Sam, brother Nabil. And of course, I was in my military career. I served 15 years in the Navy. So my focus was in my career at the time and my growth as a Christian. So those things were important, at the time. But I realized the way how what we're dealing with now, it was so important to share our story. And so now 9/11 happens, brother. So at that time, the war kind of like slowed down. Nobody's picking on the Muslims. So I told my mom I want to join the military. It's just something about it. I just always wanted to serve my country. So it was always a contention. We know that in Islam, you're not allowed to fight alongside with a kafir. But it's funny. The weird thing about Muslims in the West is almost like it's a different set of rules for Muslims in the West. They always say, "Oh, you're lucky if you're back home. It's a different story." When I convert, so I told my cousin, "So what are you trying to say? So you tell me you would unalive me?" See, at the time they couldn't do much to me because I was serving in the military. Because they know they trying to pull something. I didn't throw no punches. I'll call my contacts to get them out of there.
Look, I will bring the full force of the U.S. military down upon you and your town if you cross me.
That's right. You want to go hoorah on that? Hey, got some fellow vets, and so here I am. I was meeting with the Navy recruiter. This was like around August, so a month before 9/11 happens. I thought things were pretty quiet. I didn't fully, so I was in the DEP program, just going through the program, the paperwork. All of a sudden, I was going to Job Corps at that time. So, a lot of problems. with my family. I dropped out of high school in my senior year after because when my mom sent me away to Bangladesh for a year, it set me back. So it kind of like messed up my whole curriculum. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna drop out. I didn't want to do that, but I did. But one thing for sure, I said I'll do whatever I can to get my education. So I heard about the opportunity about Job Corps. So I went to Job Corps up in upstate New York, up in Delaware Valley. Got my GD in electrical trade. Saw Navy recruiter, and that's where I signed up with them. But at the time I'm doing the paperwork, my friend wakes me up. Hey man, wake up, man! The tower got hit. Like, what do you mean the tower got hit? I'm looking at the news. My first instinct is like, please, oh, oh Allah, please Allah, please don't let it be a terrorist attack. So I'm
That
watching
was
the
that was
news.
that was the reaction of a lot of Muslims back then. I actually heard that, like, please don't let it be a Muslim. Please don't let it be a Muslim attack, because then there's the idea was then everyone is just going to start attacking Muslims on the streets or something like that, and so on. Never happened. Never happened. But yeah, that was the reaction of a please let it be just some crazy accident where some idiot was drunk and flew into a building or
Exactly.
something.
But need to say it wasn't. As I'm watching the news, I saw the second plane hit. Yep, it's an Islamic attack. I just know right off the back, and all of a sudden, everybody's going to high emotion. People have their families working there. I seen all my friends are crying. They try to call family back home. I got even my own teachers telling me, "Is this what your religion teaches?" So I'm like a typical Muslim. Uh, all I know is Islam is peace. And I'm just being honest. That's all I know. I've never actually went in depth into it. I just go by what they tell me because I'm not allowed to question Allah in the Quran. So I'm like, I'm building up all these anger. There's many times I want to get angry at Allah, but whenever I think of that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, toba, toba, toba. I don't want to go to hell, Allah. So I've got all these level of fear pressuring me. But on that day, I said, you know what? I thought about just pulling out and not join the Navy, but I said, you know what? No, I'm going to do this. I feel so encouraged. I'm going to serve my country, and I'm going to prove them that this is not the real Islam. I thought maybe if I serve with the people, show them how Islam is what I know, that it will work out. And so I did that. I told my recruiter, no, sign me up. I'm joining in, And so at the time, there are days, Brother David, I feel like whenever I call out God in a personal time, I know that's not something as often they talk about the Islamic community. Like whenever they do their namaz, their prayer, I've never seen a lot of people. Sometimes you'll see that they'll pray out of their heart, but a lot of time what they do is they take Muhammad's prayer. So they'll memorize Muhammad's prayer, incorporate it as their prayer, but with no type of feeling, with no emotion. And that's the level of fear that we have to live through. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Before, when I was in Bangladesh, during Ramadan, this part is kind of funny, like I used to be insecure with my height back then. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm like 5'6", 5'7", So during Ramadan, so here I'm trying to understand Islam at the time. My family's teaching me about Islam, but nobody tells me about the root cause, the sin issue, and everything. So during Ramadan, during the night of Laylatul Qadr, they tell me, whatever you ask of Allah, He'll give you anything. Inshallah, I promise you. I said, you think Allah will make me 6 foot tall? I swear. I literally prayed 12 hours straight, asking Allah, make me 6 foot tall. My gym teacher told me that us guys will outgrow the women. Like, so I prayed 12 hours straight, brother. Nothing happened. I said, you told me that Allah will promise me whatever I ask Him on Laylatul Qadr, I will get what I want. Oh,
You're there.
inshallah.
You're there praying the song. I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I had a girl, the girl I would call her.
Oh, yeah, those days. But of course, as I got older, it really didn't bother me. But at that time, I had that insecurity at the time. So another reason why, how can I believe in this thing? So far, Allah didn't answer me, but you know what? I just kept going, because the only thing that kept me going to believe in Islam is because of my ancestors and because there's one God. But every time I came across certain Christians, I remember I seen street preachers in New York City. One day, this guy gave me a tract about Islam. He started saying some end time stuff. I don't know what it was, but something intrigued me in my spirit. It really scared the crap out of me, But of course, I just ran off. I don't know what was going on. I knew that God was beginning to mold me in ways, even though I didn't accept it at the time. But whenever I hear Christianity point of view, there sound interesting, especially about a lot of end time events, about prophecies. Whenever I look through the Quran, I don't find nothing in it. I'm pretty sure I could find something in the Quran or the Hadith. So when I joined the Navy, that's when I got serious in my faith. I said, you know what? I'm surrounded by water. I got nothing better to do, so I'm gonna order all these Islamic books through eBay. In the early 2000s, we didn't have what we have today, so I got to
Hmm.
get all these books through eBay.
I've been there.
I don't, yeah. So I remember I forgot what I ordered. It was an Islamic book called Science and God, and just some other Islamic sources about living a righteous life. But every time I read through the Islamic source, they'll just tell you that, and I'm just paraphrasing everything because it's been almost 20 years now, the books that I've read. It doesn't tell me anything about my life. Like all it tells you is just live a good life, believe Allah is one. Look at the stars, all from Allah, the moon from Allah. Like, okay, that's not helping me at all. That one day, when I got to the Navy, I met a Christian brother. So he was a Filipino background. The first thing he told me, he saw me because in the military we go by our last name. So he saw my last name, Shahid. Hi, salam alaikum, brother. Of course, as a typical ignorant Muslim, are you a Muslim? Oh no, I'm a Christian. I'm just saying peace be with you. So of course my common system, okay, you got me. Like,
Yeah.
so he came to me like, do you mind if I share the gospel with you? So at the time, thinking about, oh, this guy's trying to comfort me. It will never happen. I'm talking to myself, Allahu Akbar. It's not going to happen to me. Like, but I don't remember what he was reading to me. He read something from the Old Testament about Abraham, a lot of the storylines. And I'm just listening, like, man, I never heard this side before. Because in the Quran, all it does is tell me, okay, we send Jesus and believe in Moses and Muhammad. As I got more into the English translation, as I'm reading, I'm like, what the hell is this story going at? As I try to pay attention more. But of course, at the same time, it's like I'm not trying to question, but I'm paying attention to what I'm reading in the English translation. It's like it's not giving me any life solution, brother. It's not telling me about my sin issue. I don't know nothing about the prophet. So when they ask me, why do you believe in them? I got to be honest. I don't know. Just like maybe all these Muslims, they get the same answer. It's like these same Zakir Naik,
Hmm.
Ahmed Dida note passing. We're going by the same argument. You know,
And by the way, we call that the Dawa script, but notice we just asked Nabil. Nabil said this is the true religion. We said why? Give us a reason why, and then silence. And the reason is if he were talking to people who had no understanding of Islam, he would have all of a sudden given all kinds of reasons. They're to the point in Dawa where they won't even give the Ahmed Didat or Zakir Naik explanations because they know it won't work, and it won't work for 5 seconds. It only works in an atmosphere of ignorance. But there was a super chat specifically geared towards you. Actually, there are three. Let me read the first two real quick. So Sheikh Mike Winjalinj says the Shroud of Turin was a Muslim. He's saying that because earlier today I posted a video about the Shroud of Turin.
I saw the video you posted
Yeah.
this morning. Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Randy here says, God is so amazing. He loved us when we were still sinners. So by the name of Jesus, all can be saved. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
yes.
and then we have Sergeant Broombeard's trajectory. You left the righteous path and are doomed. I don't know if he's joking here because he says,
Goodness. Yeah, my
because
father talked about that. Like, dude,
Sarge, yeah, Sergeant Broombeard's trajectory. That sounds like Muhammad Hijab parody account because people call him Broombeard and stuff like that. And then he always says the trajectory. So I think he's joking here. But all right, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
power. Oh yeah, I will never forget that. My father told me about, in Islam, guys, you will have 72 wives. I'll be honest. To be honest, my mind wasn't thinking about that. Even with that, I feel convicted too. Like, what am I going to do with 72? Is this supposed to be like a whorehouse up in Jannah? Of course, I wouldn't say that, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, I'm like, okay, whatever they say, everything is almost like geared to sexual desire. Another thing I forgot to mention, see, these are all the early teachings that we got growing up, like hardcore message. They didn't throw no punches. Like the Imam will tell us that women are object, women are not meant to be loved. You cannot fall in love with them. Like, how is that possible? I always feel like, I'm like an Indian guy that watches Bollywood movies, always about always about the good romance. But no, not in Islam. They're just objects. They're your baby makers. They do what they tell you. You can beat them. And this is another thing. I didn't believe it until I saw in the English translation. Like, how do I deal with that? How do I answer to that? When they ask me these questions, I used to do these couple of debates in the ship. So because I never experienced church in the States, because I was afraid to walk in. Because I remember what my father told me. I was afraid that a jinn is going to jump on me if I walked inside a church. So I'm in the Navy vessel. I have no choice. So I talk to some of these guys, different Christian background. One of the brothers that invited me to a Bible study, and I remember he lay hands. He prayed. He was praying over me. Now he was one. He was a Pentecostal background. I saw him speaking in tongue. Of course, the back of my mind, like, what the hell is this guy babbling about? I mean, I didn't understand at the time. And I remember he prayed over me. He just said, God has a purpose for you and a plan for you. In the back of my mind, like, never, Allahu Akbar. Of course, I'm talking to myself about that. But I knew God just began to move in my life. So I connected with a lot of these guys trying to understand their faith. I had a hard time with it. I heard about the Trinity. And on and off, I heard they say Jesus is God. Now, at the time, brother, when I first got saved, it was through the Oneness Church at the time. But, at the time, I thought maybe they're the minorities or something. And the way they try to explain the Godhead at the time, even though I didn't grasp it yet, I still try to listen to the Trinitarian side and Oneness side at the time. So it seems like in the early days, I feel like back in those days, maybe they didn't explain the Trinity well. Because even when I see the street preachers, I'm listening to the guys, you must believe the Trinity, three in one. Like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm not going to worship three gods. So that's how I was programmed. Because I didn't want to disrespect God. At the time, I feared God so much. I just want to make sure I'm not idolizing in any way possible. But even within Islam too, brother, over the years, just like when I look during Ramadan, whenever I look at they played the audio version of the Quran 24 hours with the Kaaba in the background. And one day, just out of nowhere, brother, I'm just staring at it, like it's almost like I was dozed off. And just out of nowhere, I just said, what does it look like they're actually idolizing this four-wall cube?
Oh, interesting.
It kept occurring. I didn't, I was afraid to speak to Allah like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to tell Allah that way. He's going to burn me in hell. But my common sense kicked in. They're bowing down
It
to
seems
it.
to you see it seems to kick in a lot with you.
Yes, like I
So
always felt like,
guys, I want everyone to understand that point because it's a very important point. He's saying his main focus was making sure he was not guilty of idolatry. His main focus with regard to God was making sure he is not idolizing things in this world. And when we talk about common sense kicking in, that's something you typically don't see with Muslims. They'll complain if they were to see Hindus, anyone else bowing down to something. If they saw a bunch of people bowing down to this cup, they would say, "Oh, that's paganism. That's idolatry." And he's saying, all of a sudden, wait a minute, look what they're doing with that big cube. Look what they're doing with that black stuff. I mean, they're walking around and they're
exactly.
what am I against here? I'm against. That kind of looks a lot like idolatry, which I'm against.
Like, wait a minute, they're wearing the white robe. And I see, as I try to study different religions, I see the Hinduism. I said, man, I see a lot like Hinduism. But of course, I cannot say that. See, this is the problem. Like, they won't tell you the level of fear of Islam. And I know there's a demonic spirit behind it. It's almost like it puts you in a place like you're locked in. Even the most intellectual Muslims, like I got family that are educated, like they're doctors and lawyers, but when it comes to Islam, somehow they just get locked into it. They're so stuck in it that they can't question it. And then you guys attack me. I said, why not use the same method? You guys that are smart people, you got your college degree, you guys do a lot of research. Why not apply the same thing with Islam? They make it seem like it's impossible. Nobody can never convert. And this is the way that we're brought up. They think that Islam is the ultimate truth. Only they can convert. You're not allowed to convert, or you will be killed. And they told you you will be killed for it. And that's the thing that feared me. It's like I'm trying to look, man. I'm trying to live a righteous life. I'm trying to defend this faith. I don't know how to, and I'm just being honest myself. I'm trying to find ways to how do I make sense of this child marriage? What other excuse can I see? What am I going to say? They told us, oh, back in those days, the weather was so hot that their hormones changed a lot. Like, I've been to the Persian Gulf. It's still hot as hell out there. And nothing has changed, like, so.
Yeah. But by the way,
again,
just so everyone knows, that was a very common response back then. So the most common responses you get to Muhammad and Aisha were first, they're making that up. That's not true. And then, wait a minute, it's right here in Sahih al-Bukhari. It's right here in Sahih Muslim. Then it's, oh yes, because of the climate and the weather, girls reached puberty at a much younger age, and they were basically adults by the time they were 9, and so on. Which it's total nonsense. It's just made up. It's total fiction.
Yeah, so we're brainwashed to think that the Bible has been destroyed. So I use the same lies too, like what I was taught. But you destroyed the Bible. It's true. I saw some of these passages, but to be honest, I really did. When Muslims say that, oh, I read it. You didn't read it, honestly. All you did was you took cliff notes, what they told you, but you never read the whole surrounding of it. And that's what I did. Oh, look, contradiction here, there. So he says, oh, Jesus worshiped God there, but all of a sudden it says he is whatever he's trying to say. I and the Father one, and that's at the time of my ignorance. I'm like pointing fingers that there were contradiction. But one day, brother, I actually before I go there, when I got to my ship also, so yeah, like I began to hang out with some of the Christians. I seen the way how they. I think I went to one of their Bible study. I saw how they worship God, and of course I'm just observing. Um, but I didn't say much, and I was worried about what's going to happen to me. Oh, I guess no jinn jumped on me. I have no choice because I'm in a military vessel, so I have no choice. But one thing I appreciate the way how they defend, just how their love for God is really intrigued me, and even the brother that God used to minister to me, and among other people, I would make fun of that brother. I used to call this guy a Fruit Loop and everything. I thought maybe he had a feminist side. I try to look cool in front of my friends. But one day the convictions hit me so hard. Even though yes, I'm still a Muslim, but why am I feeling convicted? And yet this guy tells me, "Don't worry, I love you, brother. I'm praying for you." Somehow I can't get this guy angry. Like I'm trying my best to get him angry. I was a hot-headed person, especially the Islamic spirit. It's just like you say something against Islam, you say something against my Muhammad. I don't like that. How dare you? He's my final prophet. But I realize I cannot be that way. There's a reason why they're behaving like this, and I have to reflect back what happened in 9/11. At least as a Muslim, I'm like, I can't really get mad at the guys that they think like that. And that's why I try to tell a lot of Muslims, and I tell some of my cousins, let this be your generation for what you're seeing in Hamas. Let that be your generation. Say, you know what? I need to look into the Quran. I need to see what it really teaches. This whole lie that they're telling that Islam is a religion of peace. And one of my cousins that I was close with, brother, and I talked to him sometime. He told me at one point I thought he almost want to leave Islam. He was hanging around with this Pakistani guy that I grew up with. I know he instilled him about not to leave Islam. And he thought that, how could I do it, cousin? There's no way I could leave. I said, you can leave. Who told you that you can't leave? But of course, now that he's married, and that's the thing with the Islamic family, the
Yeah.
social status, and that's a big
It's
problem.
it's even more difficult for women. Like once a woman either converts or if she's raised in Islam, then she eventually realizes that Islam is false. But by that time, that's her husband. She's got 4 or 5 Muslim children, and so converting becomes like it's not just her relationship with God. It's all her relationships with with everyone, and it adds a lot of psychological pressure
Absolutely,
to
bro.
them. Yeah.
And so, here I'm in the Navy. I'm trying to find my faith. Like I order all these Islamic books. There's an African American Muslim. One day he came to my rack. Hey, brother, I got something. You cannot tell anybody about it. This is the thing that Muslims need to know. He brought me the Gospel of Barnabas. I don't know how he got it. Brother, I literally read the whole book. I read the Gospel. I was like, okay, I'll check it out. I read the whole thing. It's almost like I didn't know it was plagiarized at the time that I found out later on.
Yeah.
But when I read it, it's almost like there's something that I feel like they copied from the Quran. There will be a prophet later called Ahmad, according to what Jesus says in the
Mhm.
Gospel of Barnabas, that Allah is one. And as you're reading along, it's been so long, too, brother. But I'm trying to paraphrase as much as I remember. He's trying to claim that I'm just a prophet of God. He has no partner. It's almost like repetitive from the Quran. But yet again, even certain stories, a lot of it would go against the Quran because now you're mixing things with it. Nobody knows about the Gospel of Barnabas. Also, you tell me that's the best secret. Like everybody should know about it. How come it's not published then? Just all these questions come into my mind. So I thought at the time I took that account. Maybe there's truth in it, but still, the Gospel of Barnabas didn't really tell me anything about my salvation issue. It's almost like a lot of repetitiveness from the Quran, mixing things in with the Bible stories. But even with that, it will go against it.
Yeah, yeah, let's give people a little background there. So, guys, there's a book called the Gospel of Barnabas, and it's supporting Islam. Turns out it was written more than 1,000 years after the time of Jesus. There's an Italian and a Spanish manuscripts, apparently written by a some sort of apostate. Some apostate to Islam wrote this. So again, more than 1,000 years after the time of Jesus. But in the 80s and 90s, it became very popular among Muslims. Even the early 2000s, they were still using it because this is always the case in Dawah. And this is why I say that Dawah guys tend to have a pretty short lifespan, not in terms of how long they live, but a career span, because the tendency is to always try to come up with something new or some new method or some new argument to catch people off guard because they're not ready for it. Guess what? If I come up and I say, hey, here's the gospel of Slubgob, and it's the authentic gospel, you can ask 1,000 people that since I just made it up. No one's familiar with it. So I can say whatever I want, and people don't know how to respond at all. Well, it's like that with something like the Gospel of Barnabas. Say, hey, here's the authentic gospel. No one knows what that is. No one's ever heard of that. They haven't looked up the background of that thing. And therefore, it works really well for a while. There's a window where that will work really well because you could walk up to 1,000 people, 0 out of those 1,000 people have ever heard of that. So if you're really confident, here's the true book, and you could actually get people to convert based on that. And this is what the church has been hiding from you. It's the true gospel of Barnabas, not those corrupt gospels. This is the true one. And people, wow, I never knew all this stuff. Wow, this does sound like it supports Islam. Oh my goodness, you mean back then the truth was Islam back in the time of Jesus? And oh my goodness, yes, let me convert. And eventually people start looking it up, and then it becomes a source of mockery and so on. But what happens then is Muslims have to jump on the next thing, and then the next thing, and then they have to use the next thing. And it's always this ongoing looking for new things that people are ignorant about. And then once people are informed on that issue, well, you drop that and you go to something else, or you look for people who are still ignorant. And that should kind of tell everyone what they need to know about Dawah. If your arguments only work in an atmosphere of complete ignorance, and they don't work with anyone who knows anything about what you're talking about, that kind of sounds like a lie, right? Like,
oh, absolutely, brother. Yeah. And that was the problem too. You asked a tough question. I forgot to mention too, like when the 9/11 happened, I went back to the imam. We had a couple of Dawah guys back in our mosque. I came back home that weekend. I'm frustrated too. And I'm telling the imams, be honest with me. Do we teach about this violence? Like, I'm getting pressured from my own teachers and students. And the more I ask these tough questions, all of a sudden the imam gets mad at me. I forgot who this Dawah guy was. He was a Pakistani or Afghani background. He said, don't you dare talk to Allah like that. You cannot question Allah like that. You just have to accept it as it is. So I'm pulling teeth, brother. So when I left Islam, now I'm getting bombarded, and then they're getting mad at me. Well, why didn't you come to one of us? I said, what do you think I've been doing? Mm-hmm. I've been pulling from you guys. I'm hungry to know. All I'm doing is getting a lot of pushback. They distorted God's word. The Bible is false. You give me the same answer all the time. Allah is one, and that's it. Just blind faith. These people are in desperate moment. Eventually they didn't realize as things are getting the level of research they've been doing over the years. They tried their best to hide it. And it broke my heart that they did that against a lot of the Muslims in the West. I look back, brother. I feel like when people like Nabil Qureshi and myself, God brings people from different parts of the Islamic world. I feel like we were representative when Nabil was alive, myself, someone that's an American-born Muslim that we could bring to the Muslim community. Like, I understand where you're coming from. A lot of it's not our fault. And I understand there's a lot of good Muslims too. They're trying to live a nominal life. But you have to accept the reality of what the teaching says. And this is where they forget. If you know there's a problem, if you're uncomfortable with it, obviously God's trying to tell you this. Because in Islam, no one ever told us about discernment. They don't teach you about that. We don't know what these discernment mean. Where am I feeling these emotions? How can I just shut myself up when I'm just getting balled up with these feelings? Maybe that's why Muslims are a bunch of ticking time bomb. Maybe they got all these emotions built up, but they're afraid to bring it up to Allah unless Allah's going to punish them. That's why they live in that fear. And so now that, I'm in the Navy, I'm doing the research, I'm coming across people like your work, Answering Islam. Now, these guys, when I start answering, like, man, they bring a lot of good questions about from a different perspective of their reason why Islam is false. And me being a skeptic back in the days, I said, I got to make sure. I'm going to look at what their Bible says, what the Quran says. I'm like, holy crap, he's right. Even the very same violence verse I used to go up to, and and not just that, even just like the teaching of it, like to live a moral life, like nothing gives me any satisfaction. Now, at that time, I did not even read the whole Sahih Bukhari. Just reading halfway through, brother, I was already disgusted by it. I was like, what does this tell me about? Oh, do things with your right hand, eat with your right hand, write with your right hand, because if you're doing the left hand,
Yeah.
you're all from shaitan.
Yeah. Step into the bathroom with your left foot first, and that's really super important. And wipe with it. Make sure you wipe. Yeah, wipe yourself with an odd number of stones, and it's all this. Yeah, super
Make sure
valuable.
make sure the piss don't drip on you. Like
Mm.
literally, this if you get a little drip, oh my gosh, you're gonna go to
Yeah.
hell. Like,
Yeah,
what the hell?
Muhammad. Yeah, Muhammad said that over half the punishment of the grave is for urinating improperly.
I laugh at it now, brother. I'm like, I try my best like to make sense of it. I'm like, how am I gonna tell these people? I'm just being a real like I'm growing up. Logic was important to me. Like I'm trying to make sense of it. I'm trying to defend this book. It's not helping me at all. Now, what am I gonna do with the child marriage? It's not helping me at all. Now, in the hadith, I found out Sahih Muslim, Abu Bakr and another companion asking Muhammad for his daughter's Fatima marriage. What does Muhammad say?
Too young.
She's too young. I said, hold up. So all of a sudden, things start clicking again. So this guy, what if he was a pervert? Then like the more I feel like I get more stuff from out of the hadith than I would in the Quran. It's like you see the real deal what Islam is through that story. So with the whole child marriage, I went more in depth. When Muhammad came to Abu Bakr, for his daughter marriage, his response was, "But you're my brother." I mean, my common sense already understood what
Mm.
he's saying. It's like saying, "Yo, man, what are you trying to tell me? You're supposed to be a brother to me." I understood what he's saying. Well, you're just my brother. Like, and what he said, you're my brother
In
in
religion.
religion,
Hmm.
but in faith, you must do what I say.
Hmm.
Like he literally used that. I'm pretty sure when Abu Bakr heard that, oh, Fatima's too young. I could imagine what he might be going through. Man, this guy,
She's too young.
what?
Oh,
Exactly.
so if it's your daughter, then she needs to be a grown woman. But if it's my daughter, oh yeah, you can bang her all you want, and it doesn't matter how old she is. Okay, great, good to know. Good to know.
I was disgusted by that. And also, I forgot to mention when I remember when Brother Nabil debated Shabir Ali. We all looked up to him. I see how he showed the endearment. When Shabir Ali came on, I was like, wow, this guy knows proper English. This is the thing. A lot of the Muslims, they think that whatever he say, oh, sounds good to me. I'm gonna trust him. Or how about Zakir Naik? I remember I came across. He was spinning all these Bible verses. John chapter number 9, verse number 1.
Yeah.
Oh,
Verse
Matthew
number
number
23.
2.
Verse number 23.
Allah says we
Chapter
better
number
do
17.
than you.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, I don't know what he said, but I'm gonna take his word for it. It looked like he knows his stuff in the Bible. But now over the years, like when I saw when Brother Nabil did the rebuttal of all the verses that many Muslims follow, because nobody didn't want to look up in the book. They just thought, hey, sounds like he knows what he's talking about, so I'm just gonna go by his word of mouth. And that's another problem with a lot of in the Muslim community. It's so important to verify all that. And that's why I realized I have to go in depth. So not only I did the biggest risk. They told me never to read the Bible. So after I'd done some of my Islamic study, I said, you know what? Where did all this happen? How did we got sidetracked? There has to be only one truth. It cannot just be that we all serve the same God and we're bickering and fighting. I want to know about the prophets. Whenever I hear the Christian arguments, I don't know, it sounds so intriguing. So you know what I did, brother? I got the Bible. I read the Old Testament and the New Testament. I read the whole thing from the beginning to the end. Maybe it took me about 3 to 4 months to finish it. When I read the Old Testament, honestly, brother, I felt like I got a better understanding. I get to see what I've been going through in my life that I can relate to the prophets. I understand now what the original sin is. Of course, in our mindset, we think that, oh, how can we be born if so we're perfect? But the way the Christian explained it, they said it's not original sin as like, we know that as a baby you're perfect, but it's that curse that's passed down. So I said, oh, it does make sense because eventually I did sin. All Muslims did sin. So yeah, we That makes sense. The
Yeah,
original
that's
sin.
been pointed out. So yeah, the Christian view is that you have a sin nature. You have this just built-in inclination to sin, and people say, "Ah, that's an awful teaching." It's like it is one of the most empirically verifiable claims
Absolutely.
ever. If you want to say, "Hey," if you want to say, "Hey," of all the claims that have ever been offered by anyone, what do I have the most empirically verifiable evidence for? Well,
It's like, so
human beings have a tendency to sin would be up there. I mean, you're talking about anyway. Yeah.
exactly. Muslims do. I said, you guys are doing you're sinning right now. You're cursing at Christian and Jews. You want to go unalive them. What do you? That's what they mean by original sin. So I try to explain that to some of my family members, but they get so caught up because I know a lot of them are still stuck in that control by Satan. So I've read the Old Testament, even the violence verse. I remember hearing about the violence verse, and that's what I always tell Muslims: put your agenda aside. At least just read it. Look at the whole context. So to me, I got to better understand as I'm reading along the story why God told Israel to go take out Amalekites. I saw the section Genesis. I forgot what chapter it was in. I want to say where God told, before I give you this land, the level of sin hasn't reached yet
Hmm.
at Canaan before He gives that land. So that just shows that how much grace and mercy He has. So eventually, when I understood why the judgment came, no different from the flood. Muslims believe in the flood. I bring this up. So are you okay with when God wiped out the whole land the first time? Babies died right there. But the problem with Muslims is they like to see something miraculous. They're not used to saying, "Oh, how could God use the Jews to unalive them?" God can do it by, He did it with the whole world. He could do it by tribes, by nations. So I understood it as I'm going with the flow, and I could see the Spirit of God's giving me the understand. Oh, I've recognized it. And to me, it's like it came to me naturally. I accepted it. I understand we live in the world. Nothing is perfect. I'm not going to get mad about it, but I see the difference with what they say is the violence and the Quranic side. Kill the Christians and Jews wherever they are. I got to the point it disgusted me. Don't be friends with the Christians or Jews. Um, Take women as captive of war. They never told us about that, and I'm finding this out more and more. And this is why the Hadith disgusted me. We used to blame on the Jews a lot. When I got to the part about the Jews, brother, in the Hadith, what Muhammad said? Oh, there's a Jew hiding behind there. Go kill them. I'm using my common sense, brother. I'm like, why? And it says, oh, even the trees and the rock will cry, oh, look, there's a Jew hiding behind there. Come and get him and kill him. I'm not gonna lie, I got so disgusted even more. I don't know how to handle that, bro. So now I'm thinking back, wait a minute. We like to blame the Jews for everything that they're doing, but we're not looking back in our responsibility, what we did. As I look more in the story of Khaybar, what they did to Safiya, my father never told me about the story. My father made it in a way that Safiya accepted Muhammad's marriage. Oh, yes, they wiped up the Jews, but Safiya said, oh, you're a prophet of God. I will marry you. Even as a common sense kid, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Who the hell's
Yep.
gonna marry someone like
Yeah. Right after they tortured and killed her husband
exactly?
and conquered her people, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, I had a dream about marrying you. You're so cute." Come on.
I love the stench of your smell,
Hmm.
Muhammad.
Hmm.
And I just got disgusted by it, brother. So I'm reading along, brother. So I read the whole Old Testament. I felt like I got a better understanding. So based on my judgment, it talked about the oneness of God. I accepted it. I see nothing wrong. So what is this thing we're arguing about? So okay, now let me go to the New Testament. And I was aware about people hearing Jesus as God or not, but let me just read it for myself. And I would never forget, brother. As I'm reading the book of Matthew, I'm going through the genealogy. I come across Matthew 5, and I have it with me open too, because at that point when I read Matthew 5, brother, I swear, brother, I felt like I wanted to convert right away. I was so intrigued by the message. He says,
Matthew
"Blessed."
5. By the way, that's yeah. I'll let you read what you're talking about, but there are all these connections. But yeah, I remember this was 2000 and either 2003 or 2004. I was in a hotel room with Nabil, and I read to him the Sermon on the Mount. I don't remember what led to it, but I remember going, "Here, listen to what this says." And I remember reading to him the Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew 5 through Matthew 7. And he kept going, "Wow, that's awesome. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Until we got to don't do your prayers in front of other people. And he's like, wait, what's that? What's that saying? And I was like, oh, you worried about that? That's talking to you. That everything's for a show in your religion. And then and then you got the passage about don't fast to be seen by other people and so on. He's like, hey, wait a minute. And so he had a couple of objections later on, but other than that, Muslims love the Sermon on the Mount because it's so. I'll say this: when Muslims say, "Oh, the Quran is so amazing, it is nothing can compare to it," I will put the entire Quran up against just the Sermon on the Mount. I'll sit here and I'll just read passages from the Sermon on the Mount, and we'll go back and forth. You read the best passages from the Quran. I'll just stick with this one passage of the Bible and roll with that. Anyways, good,
Bro,
yeah, good stuff. But go ahead.
yeah, that chapter. So I mean, just chapter 5, 6, and 7 destroys everything in the Quran. Nothing can beat that type of powerful message, you know. And I was just intrigued. Like, it's like I got it right here. I'm reading along. Blessed are the poor in spirit, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed they will be comforted. In my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds so good. Blessed are the gentle, because they will inherit the earth. As I'm reading, oh my God, I feel like I want to confess right away. But of course, I'm going through this warfare. I'm thinking like, oh, you're worshiping an idol. Be careful. So I'm just warning against myself. Oh, astaghfirullah, toba, toba, toba. I'm doing the whole toba thing like that I'm making sure I'm not trying to blaspheme God, you know, because it didn't intrigue to me that God can become a man. But you know, as more and more the brothers explained to me, you know, when I read the whole New Testament, yes, I was looking for a point that there was some contradiction, but at the same time, I never found it in the Quran, brother David. How could I really reject this kind of message? And it's like that's what holds back. It's like it's almost like I would take everything out of Christianity, but it's like I'm afraid that I'm gonna make a wrong move. I mean, the level of fear, brother, you have no idea. It's like the warfare is real. I see why Jesus Christ mentions about, you know, try to walk in the spirit, the flesh and the spirit. I know a lot of Muslims are afraid. They're afraid of that, but if they just gave it a chance, they'll see the wisdom of God behind it. So, you know, I went along. I carried that message with me. Now, I got done reading the Bible, and I was in. This is when I was somewhere in the South China Sea, and I was doing my job. I told the guys, "Hey guys, I'm going to chow." And I remember I was in the mess hall eating my lunch. When I dropped the tray, I swear, I thought it was somebody. Somebody tapped me. All I heard was a voice saying, "Keep reading and keep seeking." And I turned around. Now at the moment, you know, I'm still a Muslim. I'm not thinking about anything miraculous. And I remember like it was yesterday. I said, "Okay," I just went on about my business. You know, when I look back now, like, oh my gosh, where's God's trying to tell me something, but I didn't understand at the time. So we pulled into Australia, brother, you know, and we're on a port visit. And, you know, we're just doing what sailors do. You know, I got my first type of freedom, you know, being away from my family, trying to have an independence hangout, you know, and, you know, I hooked up with the girl out there in Australia. And I remember, brother, the level of fear hit me so strong. You know, I said, oh my gosh, Allah, I sinned against you. I remember I was in my hotel room, bro. Like I felt like I could hear these demonic voices trying to control me, and I'm shivering. I'm in my bed, like Allah, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. Uh, You know, like I'm doing my best, brother. You know, I'm trying to be the best Muslim that I can. You know, and I know I'm paraphrasing a lot of things. Again, there's so much to pack. You know, but we know what it stands for. What we've seen in the Quran. Yeah, I'm like Allah. Don't you understand what I go through at time? You know, and I remember I came back to the ship. You know, at that point, I felt like the level of sin in my life, I felt defeated. Brother Joseph, he came to me. He says, "Brother, how's your faith?" I said, "To be honest, I'm sucking right now." He said, "No, I'm about to give the service right now." He said, "You're more than welcome to come by." At that moment, brother, it's to the point I didn't care about. I remember what my father told me. All the imams says, "Don't go to the church." At that point, I didn't care. All I wanted to do is just go pray somewhere. I said, "You know what, brother? I'm going to do that." And I went to the service that night. So we're pulling out of Australia. We're somewhere in the South China Sea. You know, we're on our way to Hong Kong, and this time it was different. I went to when I got there 2002, 2003 when I gave my life to Christ. So within that year, I went to maybe two Bible studies, but this was the first time I actually saw an actual service. And I remember I'm just in the back, brother. You know, I'm just looking at it. We have all the Marines on board. So my first year was an amphib ships. We take the Marines where they need to go for training and everything. See, you know, it brings me joy too when I see all of our Marine brothers and Navy brothers. We get together and worship. But I'm just watching in the back. I'm like, wow, look how happy they are. And I'm just saying this to myself. All of a sudden, I'm tearing up. I didn't convert right away, but I knew something was beginning to change. The brother that was preaching, he's looking at me. And, as a typical Muslim, we try to hide our tears. We have to show we're manly, be like Mr. Muhammad, hijab, fee, fight, fo, fum, like be tough guy. So I'm tearing up. After the service was over, brother, I just ran off and left. All of a sudden, I'm like, what is going on? Something is just beginning to change in me. I don't know what the answer is. Something is just leading me that everything that I learned, something is just not adding up. So what I did was I went back to the Quran. I went back to all of my footnotes, everything that I learned over the years. It's like all of a sudden God just cracked my heart open and my mind open. And I remember in the Bible verse it talks about you just keep planting that seed until it cracks open. And all of a sudden, all the violence verse I saw, I said, I can't do this anymore. I know what it says. I see about the Jewish stories. I'm just going back to it. Not even the violence verse, even just the ridiculous wisdom of Muhammad, the stupidity of Muhammad's word. I got so disgusted. Now I'm like, enough is enough. I took my Quran, brother, and I threw it against the bulkhead. I'm
Ooh.
done with it. I threw
Ooh.
my Quran against the wall. I can't do this anymore. All of a sudden, it's like things just started to click. But I didn't convert right at the moment. But I just knew there was a God out there. I remember the next day I woke up. I said, "Oh, Allah, forgive me for throwing the Quran against the wall." But this time it was different. Even though I said that, but I feel like God is beginning to move in me. Now, the next night after I threw my Quran against the wall, I tried to do my namaz. So what Muslims does is, if we don't have anywhere to go pray, I used to just pray in my rack. I used to do the imitation, like I'm doing the namaz, but I was on the top rack. So I had to be like, Allah Akbar, do all that crazy ritual. All of a sudden, I felt disgusted saying the name of Allah. And I was just done with it. I remember I was just laying in my bed, brother, like, you get to a point in your life, you get to a point in your life, you're just desperate. I'm just hungry for God, like I fear God all my life, I try to live the righteous life. But now that when I went back to the Bible, now everything that I accumulated, now instead of saying that, how can Jesus be a man? I said, wait a minute, what if he did came? Now that when I look back in the Bible verses, I look back on the Answering Islam and other website that's challenging the Quran, everything's just starting to begin to click. I said, could this be? Because I did read the stories of, the way how Jesus says, not even the prophets cannot talk the way he does. If you don't believe that I am he, you shall never see life. Philip says, show us the Father. He said, show us the Father. Haven't I been with you for so long? If you see me, you've seen the Father. Or he says that I and the Father are one. So, and the more I look at the connection, now I'm starting to understand, even though at the time the Trinity didn't grasp me at the time, a brother gave me this book. At the time, he gave me this book called The Oneness of God by David Bernard. But now that I left that church 5 years ago, when it comes to the other heresies, but at that time, what I did was, I tried to make everything common sense. I took the version from the modalism where they says, I'm a son, I'm a father. But whatever it did, that made me click first to understand what the Trinity is. Now I understand the Trinity fully, what it represents, how they use the personality, the deity of Christ. So not all that makes sense. So what I did was I tried to maybe look at myself since I was made in the image of God. So I went back to the Old Testament. Okay, I'm an image bearer of God. I have a body, soul, and spirit. Oh, I get it now. So at the time, how I understood three persons, I now understand what the three person is. Even though not in the sense of the modalism type, but I try to take that a little bit of that understanding, like within myself, like I'm a trichotomy compound. So I took that within that self, but still, I was still warned against myself. So I went to sleep that night. I'm just laying in my bed, and I'm just desperate. I tried to do it one more time, calling Allah. I feel disgusted again. It's almost like God was telling me, just say it. You know who I am. Say it. And all I could remember was those beautiful words from Jesus, how he'll give us hope for heaven. Because all my life, I fear God so much, like even right now, I feel like I'm just gonna cry right now, because just the level of the fear I was put through, and I see the hope what Jesus did for us, brother, and sorry about that, brother. Every time I get to that part, it tears me up.
Dang. I want everyone who's laughing right now to understand those are manly tears. Those are some manly tears right there.
Brother, and I just kept calling his name instead of Allah. I said Jesus. First, I got scared. What if I'm blaspheming? It's almost like God said, "You know who I am. Just say it." And I'm just laying there like a desperate child, like Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And the more I call his name, all of a sudden I begin to feel this peace. I probably I'm just laying there like a child, desperately. I want to know my God. All I could know is what Jesus told me because his word drew me so close. I just kept calling his name 10 minutes straight. And I remember the announcement came in as taps, taps, lights out, all hands into your bunk. Usually when you're out to sea, everybody's still working 24 hours on the clock, but by 10 p.m., they call out, it's time to go to bed. And I'm just laying there like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. As I was getting sleepy, brother, I remember I just quickly closed my eye and opened, and this flash of light came. Not like your typical Hollywood movie. I remember like it was yesterday. It was like a rainbowish 3D prism color. It was almost like a zoom. It lasted for maybe 10 to 20 seconds. I said, what is that I'm looking at? It was just this most beautiful rainbowish 3D prism color. And then it disappeared. My heart was beating so fast, brother. I remember I was just laying in my rack. I'm trying to calm my anxiety down. I said, wait a minute, could this be? Did I just call the name of my God? All my life, I'm going to the mosque. Even though I miss a lot of five-time prayers, but I try to do whatever I can to do my makeup prayer. I did everything what my uncles told me. Say this prayer, take these prayer beads, kind of like the rosary. Say Allahu Akbar, Bismillah, Bismillah, and God will clean your heart. I said, look, man, I still feel the same. Nothing has happened. But all of a sudden, I called the name of Jesus, brother. I saw this light. I said, could this be? Did I just call the name of my God? The next day, brother, I woke up in the morning. One of my bunkmates was a Jewish guy, but he became a Buddhist later on. He's the first guy I told him. We always talk about life, philosophy. And I said, bro, I called on Jesus. I saw the light. I said, you sure you're not drunk? I said, bro, we're already out to sea for a week now. I cannot be tipsy. So that thing was stuck on me. So I told another friend of mine named Brother Antonio. He used to share me history. He came to Christ a year after I did, but he grew up in a Christian home. He heard about a lot of testimonies. So I brought that to him since he was my closest friend. I said, bro, can you explain something to me? I said, I called on Jesus. All of a sudden, I saw this light. What does that mean? He said, brother, I don't know. I heard similar testimonies like yours. I said, just pray about it. I said, okay, I'll do that. Maybe another 2 or 3 days passed by. I am still stuck in that thing. I can't stop thinking about it. I think after I saw the light 2 days later, I'm just asking God, please, anything, show me something. I went on break. When I got to my birthing area, all of a sudden there's a Bible just sitting there on the floor. Maybe that's a sign. I picked it. It was one of those Gideon Bibles. I took the Gideon Bible. I said, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. I'm naming how I understood. I'm making sure I'm calling all the gods of the prophet's name. I said, I don't know what happened. I said, God, just anything, show me something, speak to me. I said, God, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the Bible. I'm just going to put my finger to any chapter and verse and anything, just show me something that happened that night. So I just looked up in the ceiling, opened the book, put my finger, and he led me to Revelations chapter 3, verse 20, where he says, I'm knocking at the door and I'm ready to wine and sup with you. But he's waiting for us to open the door to him. I burst into tears right away. I said, I can't think of a better word than what happened that night. People want to know where God is. Indeed, I keep calling out Allah. It's almost like God will say, you're right, son. There is one God, but you didn't know who I am. You have to know me through the Son of God that I came through. And so when I saw that, I burst into tears. I said, Lord, now I believe. I said, I believe. At first, when I said I was hesitant, I said, I believe you're my Lord and Savior. I said it 2 more times. Lord Jesus Christ, I believe you're my Lord and Savior. And I felt this burden lifted off of me. I felt a heavy weight just took off of me. And at that point, I said, I'm ready to follow God. Now, all of a sudden, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, my family don't know I left Islam. Oh, that's another problem. I'm still in Japan. I'm stationed in Japan. And so we pulled into Hong Kong. I said, I'm ready to follow Christ. I want to do what the Bible says, get baptized. I remember we crashed in the middle of a Filipino women's Bible study. We got to get these brothers baptized. So it was me and like 9 other Marines got baptized that day. And I remember the day that I got baptized. Now, everyone's testimony is different. At the time, I'm just trying to be obedient. I'm trying to understand what the Word of God says. And for me, I felt when I got baptized that day, I felt so clean. I said, Lord, is this what it means to be born again? Like, when you take a shower, you feel clean. But in that instant, I feel like, oh my gosh. Now, all of a sudden, I'm walking to the streets of Hong Kong. All of a sudden, I'm getting this weird discernment. What does that even mean? Like, God is beginning to move in me now. As a Muslim, I feel like it's almost like the devil knew, yeah, you got to go to hell with me. I'm not even going to bother you. But man, did I wake up a lot of spirits. I have seen a lot of spirits attack me over the years. I literally seen spirits in the dark form, and I did what the Bible says, and I rebuked in Jesus' name, and I seen how they fled. To me, it just shows that God's word is true. Everything that has God has shown in my life through being born again, spiritual warfare, His word is true. Now is breaking the news to my family. When we pulled back to Japan at my home port, oh my gosh, my heart was beating so fast. I know what the word of God says, that anyone that's ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of them, my Father. I knew this was important because Jesus also says, anyone that loves their mother, father, brother, sister more than me, he cannot be my follower. So I called my mom up. I said, Mom, I don't know how to say it. You know how you guys always want me to search the truth, keep studying. I said, I did that. And I said, Mom, I just want to say that I'm a Christian now. My mom was like, what are you talking about? You're playing with me, right? Stop playing. I said, no, I'm serious. I'm a Christian now. Man, she just cursed me out, and it was the hardest thing, like who told you this? Did the government brainwash you? Like Muslims are they're the worst when it comes to what's the word I'm looking for? Skepticism, kind of like what the woke media use these days when you're trying to say something against them, like gosh, I forgot. I swear the mid 40s is hitting me hard now. Like, but pretty much my mom thought I became the first Christian. Actually, no. Actually, you know what? There's a Nigerian guy in my first command. Besides the guy in Bangladesh, I met an African guy in my first command. He told me that he's an ex-Muslim. So another one that intrigued about a guy, but he became a Christian before he joined the Navy. This Nigerian guy that was serving in the Navy. So, I could see he was happy too when I gave my life to God. I said, no, I met one guy in my ship from Nigeria. He was a Muslim too. He became Christian. So I'm not the only one. So that's how bad it is within Islam. My mom literally thought that I was the first Christian out of all the Muslims that converted. I said, no,
Well,
mom, there's more.
by the way, because we mentioned earlier that back then, as far as people who were publicly ex-Muslim, I mean, you could count them on a few fingers of one hand because they weren't around. There were so few of them that it was still very common in Islam to say no one ever leaves Islam.
Absolutely.
Which is insane if anyone knows anything about Muslim history. I mean, Abu Bakr, the first rightly guided caliph, had to fight what are called the apostate wars. He had to fight wars against
Absolutely.
all the people who were leaving Islam. And then in the Muslim sources, there are all these stories about people who were converting because of Muhammad and then seeing something wrong and then leaving Islam. Like he had one of his scribes, Abdullah ibn Abi Sar, who was editing the Quran for Muhammad to make it better, and he realized, wait, if this guy's receiving the perfect speech of Allah and he's letting me change it, there's no, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Am I a prophet? Am I a prophet too here? If I get to add things and change things? So there's no way if I'm not a prophet, this guy's not a prophet either. So he leaves
Yeah.
Islam and so on until Muhammad conquers Mecca. Then he had to convert back. But yeah, there were so few back then that it was still very common to say no one has ever left Islam. It never happens, and that was actually used as an argument. Whereas now they're the ones talking about the avalanche of apostasy and the tsunami of apostasy because there are so many apostates. But yeah, so it wouldn't. I mean, that would have been a normal reaction for like a Muslim mother back then. Like, what? No one ever leaves Islam. What are you talking about? How could you?
That's the brainwash that they were taught. I said, Mom, you guys always want me to understand Islam. Like out of all my family, I felt like at least I was trying to be more religious about. I never see any of my cousins or any of them try to at least pray 5 times a day. Half of them don't even read the Quran at times. Even whenever I go visit my mom, I try to say, I tell my cousin, look, I'm not one of those guys that's gonna bash at you. I want you to ask me these questions. But it's like nobody don't want to bring it up, Like they'll have some snarky comment whenever I go see my cousins in Detroit, like they live in the area where the heavy Muslim population is, like in Hamtramck, Dearborn, like it's a mess over there. They named this section called Bangla Town, right next to Hamtramck. And I know you guys been out to Dearborn. I saw some of the videos with you and brother Nabil, and I got family out there. I saw that area in Dearborn, Hamtramck. Even in those areas, like there are a lot of new generation Muslim. There's some cool people, but because when you live within the Muslim community, they try to brainwash you with their village mentality. Because a lot of these old school Muslims comes from the village. They bring that hardcore Islamic mindset, and they teach the same way of their hatred against the country. They tell you just, yeah, we're here. Don't try to be too friendly with them, but our whole agenda is Islamicizing. But how can you do that? I never see any Muslims try to preach to Christians or even try. So their only hope is if I could just pop a lot of babies. And that's what I forgot to mention too. I think it's important. And I remember you said you made a video like in the past, like even with these moderate Muslims, how do we know? Are there a lot of moderate Muslims that just want to do the right thing? There are, but what makes it so dangerous because Islam teaches you to lie, and that's another thing that shocked me. What, you want me to lie to them in order to what? To win souls, like, and pretend? And that makes it even more dangerous because there are moments of my life, I'm warned against myself. I'm like, I would say to myself, please Allah, let this population grow so I don't have to have these kafirs ask me a million questions. So Muslims are trying to find any means necessary. If I could just pop a lot of babies, I can avoid all the questions. Now you will see the true Islam. You will do what I say. If you don't convert, pay the jizya. That's what they're all hoping for. That's their hope. So that's why it's so important to bring these truth. And I want them to be free. And man, I had so many backlash. I had people from England. I got on my dad's side, I got a lot of family in England. All of a sudden, I get this email like, "Who the heck is this guy from London? Like, what did they do to you? Here's the look at the truth. The Bible's all full of contradiction. When you're vulnerable in the early stage, it can maybe sound convincing, but I said, I know what I saw. I'm not going to convert or go back to Islam, but whatever it was that encouraged me more to study out the Bible more. I try to understand my new faith. At the time, I wasn't thinking about any apologetics at the time. Focusing my career, I was trying to focus on my growth with God. But yeah, it hurt me, brother. My mom told me that if I die, don't come to my grave. That was the hardest thing to hear from my mother. Like, instead of responding with anger, when I went back to visit, all of a sudden there was a big family meeting. They tried to talk me back out to converting. Even one of my great uncle that I respected because he has a Puerto Rican wife, his three kids, I don't think they even practice Islam. But you telling me you're mad at me? I'm a bad guy now for leaving Islam. I didn't want to be a give him a smart response. I just said, well, what about your kids? They married
Mm.
outside the race. See, it's weird that it's okay within them. Anyone from outside, I don't know, maybe because of shame, they want to make sure Islam is the strongest. Some people, some of my family was like, okay, fine, you left Islam, but you're not allowed to preach to any of us or talk to one of us. I said, no, I'm going to do that. I can't just stop. What do you mean? You think I'm going to disobey my God, not to preach about? The difference is, I said, I'm not going to force you, but if they ask me the questions, I will tell them the problems in the Quran. So it was on and off. Half of my family disowned me. Some of my cousins, they're like newer generation American. They still talk to me, but not in the same level. Having that relationship because now I don't do the things what they do. A lot of the worldly things. But I went on with life, brother. After my conversion, brother, I just want to know more about God. When I left Japan, I got to Norfolk, Virginia. God began to use me out there. I ministered to a couple brothers. Like, I never thought of myself being a minister. I thought, who am I, Lord? I'm a nobody. But it just shows that God can use anyone when you have an open heart. And if any Muslims are watching, all I can say is just be open minded to God. Even if you're afraid to call out God, at least call him the true living God. If you're hungry for the truth, He will show you the truth. He's not gonna hide from you. See, with Islam, Allah is like He's playing chess game with you. I make whoever go astray, I make whoever not go astray. And that's the problem I brought to my uncles. I said, the Quran teaches about killing the Christians. I brought that up. My uncle tried to pretend like, no, 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 it doesn't say that. It does. And that's another problem I hate with the hard-headed Muslims. It's in the source. Are you telling me no? And that's the one thing I hate about the dishonesty because I know they're going through the warfare. They don't want to question Allah. So when I went on deployment, brother, so after becoming a Christian within a year in, I was in Iraq and they needed a translator at that time. They said there were some Pakistani fishermen around there. And they know my background. Like I said, I'm not perfect in Hindi or Urdu, but I could pick up a few words what they say. I said, that's good enough. I said, okay. But even though we didn't find anything going on, we didn't find any Pakistani fishermen around by Iraq. I hanged out with the Iraqi soldiers out there, hearing their stories, what they went through with Saddam. One of the translator, I remember I was in the patrol boat. We were going to one of the oil platform in the Persian Gulf. They're looking at my last name. I could hear the Shahid, Shahid, Musliman, Musliman. So I figured what they're trying to say. Oh, damn, they're gonna ask me if I'm a Muslim or not. But good thing I'm in uniform. If something did were to go rolled out, hey, I'm already
I
packed and
will
ready.
rain down the entire force of the U.S. military upon you.
Hoorah! So the translator approaches me. He says, "Brother, if you don't mind asking, I know your name. We know that's a typical Arab Muslim name. Are you a Muslim by any chance?" I took a deep breath. I said, God, I felt the encouragement from the Lord. I said, I used to be a Muslim. My family are still Muslim, but I'm a Christian now. He pulls me to the side. He said, brother, whatever you do, the law says you should be killed. So instead of getting me mad, I said, thank you for your honesty. Now I could go tell my family what you exactly told me. So
Mhm.
he's being honest. See, these are the real
You run
Muslims.
back. You see? You see?
And I'll probably share your photo I have a photo with the guys in Iraq. I'll send you in the email, one of the translator that told me. And, but I still hang out with, they're good people, but I was honest with them. I told them, yeah, I'm a Christian now, I used to be a Muslim. So they know the real deal, So I've seen that side of the world, I've seen in Afghanistan, like how people live, I mean, Afghanistan is even worse, like I've seen third world countries. They said Afghanistan is considered like a fifth world country. That's how bad it is. But God has shown me over the years, brother, just even the nominal Muslims, I can tell there are people that want to do the right thing. But it's true. When Muslims use that argument, oh, that's just a handful. Yeah, those handful are the most powerful people that can control you. I'm so angry about what our government did, just giving it back to Taliban. People don't realize, us in uniform, we try to do the right thing. And as Christians, I say we show a good example, not like Muslims. They go to these towns, they'll capture the women, start raping them because Allah told them. It's like we're a good example what Christianity is. You know, we know politics is a different mess, but for us as nominal sailors and soldiers, we try to help the community. I was there in Afghanistan as a provincial reconstruction team, building the community, building relationships. And I seen a lot of the people. Even there's a lot of Afghanis that got saved. Just seeing our presence, not just with the military. There's a lot of civilians that work there in Afghanistan. Many of the women felt more safe with us. And when we left, it's like these girls now that they're in their 20s. I mean, half of their life was with us
Mhm.
since 2000, what, 2002, 2003. And it breaks my heart, because we shed a lot of blood. I cry till this day, like every day I have to read an email that we lost one of our brothers, in Afghanistan. And just like that, we just hand it back to them, to the Taliban. We should have bombed the crap out of them. And that's why, I know, and this is how they use that tactic, and some of these woke people, they don't understand. Islam uses their own people. I saw what they're doing, what Hamas is doing is
Mhm.
the same thing I saw in Afghanistan. They'll use their own people. They put all these IEDs, and it makes it harder for us to do our job. We got all these Democrats worrying about people's feeling, and they're taking advantage of this. They don't go by the Geneva Convention. It's not the old Geneva Convention where it's you fight against uniform. No, this is a whole different warfare. This is what makes Islam so dangerous, that they can lie, they can blend in, and they're taking advantage of that. And that's why I appreciate what Israel does. They don't play that game. Oh, you took one of my people, we're taking half of you guys out. Nobody likes war, but that's the nature of it. And
Yeah,
these Afghan,
along that issue, it's I believe, all people are created in the image of God, um and because of Christianity, we ended up with just war theory, right? Like Christians understood, wait a minute, the Bible does say that that governments are there for
exactly,
God to punish wrongdoers and so on, and yet we're supposed to love. How do we harmonize these things? So they came up with
exactly,
criteria for actually fighting wars, but back in the day, if you were going to fight a war, you were fighting to win. You were fighting to win and keep your people safe at the end of the day and make sure you had the best possible outcome. And then at some point it became, if you fight a war, just make sure you're not too mean. And then you never actually have an official victory over your enemies, because you don't want to actually crush your enemies, because that would be mean and brutal. And
yeah,
therefore just end up with a never ending war. And so, yeah, so I mean, like my view would be, okay, either fight to win or don't fight, stay out of it. Either fight to win or stay out of it. And instead, the mentality just became fight these never ending wars and just stay there. And
Yeah,
The opposition is to the point where they understand if we just wait, we'll win. If we just wait, you're going to get bored of this. You're going to get sick of this after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Doesn't matter. It could be 40 years, could be 50 years, could be 100 years, but you're eventually going to want to pull out without achieving victory, and then we win. So all we have to do is wait you out. And it's to the point where like people look at Israel and say, you're just being brutal and completely crushing your enemies. That's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed
yeah,
to, you're supposed to, when they kill your people, you're supposed to go kill a couple of theirs and then wait for them to kill some more of yours. And then you kill some more of that. And it just goes on forever, just
yeah,
forever, just fight
yeah.
forever. Never actually end, because in order to end it, you're going to have to be really brutal and relentless in going at and hunting these guys in tunnels and stuff and like that. And that's just too mean. So
Yeah.
this is the insane part. The humane thing to do is never achieve victory. Just go back and forth, have an endless war until you let them win and you give everything back to them. That's the humane thing to do. It's like, are you nuts? Since when that's a modern idea, a really modern idea. Because even in the time when you had just war theory and so on, it was you're not. This would be stupid. This would be like the stupidest, dumbest, most insane form of warfare. Never achieve victory and then give everything back after you spent billions of dollars and lots of lives, and then just hand it all back because you don't want to actually do the difficult, mean stuff of war. It's pretty crazy.
Under Obama's administration, we're like a bunch of football players. Oh, you gotta wait till they shoot you first, then get at them. Like and we want the human thing. None of us don't like. But at this situation, I don't know. I said they should have just taken out all the Taliban. All of a sudden we left. They act like they won the victory. People don't realize it's all political correctness. We had the firepower to take them out. And I know logistically it's a difficult one. I mean, we've been there for 20 years. I mean, all of our vehicles out there. Man, there are times, brother, I was afraid whenever I have to escort an Afghani guy in with this little truck that looked like he could just explode me inside with him. I literally had to pray at time, Lord, please, I need your intercession. So I would get away. Sometimes I know a little bit of Urdu. Some Afghanis they understand the Urdu language, so I'll speak a little bit of Urdu with them, like, oh, Urdu aati hai, like Urdu, So that kind of like will calm it down if in case he doesn't try to pull anything stupid, and but yeah, brother, like one thing I learned also too, indeed, the and I don't say that with our government too, it's a tricky thing because I came across a lot of Freemasons in the military, it's like any big corporation because I used to hear story. There's one guy when I was in boot camp. I don't know why he had to tell me that, and I'm just sitting there, I'm freaking. I used to be one of those conspiracy theory guys, like, oh snap, I see a guy with a Freemason ring, like. And he told me out of nowhere, like, without war, we can't make money. Like, I'm like, what is he telling me? Like, and I was still at the Muslim at the time when I was in boot camp, maybe because when I brought up my background, but I'm not saying that these are true, these are just things that I hear, Lord knows why all these things are happening, but all I can say is that God brought me through the military, like that's why I never have any regrets in life. I love my country. That even made me love my country more. The people that I met in the Navy, every walks of life, and I continue on. And I did 15 years. Could have done 20. At the time. That's like maybe a different story for another time. Being in the oneness church for 15 years, a lot of it affected my marriage. That's a different story of another time, or just any time, like because that's what led me to leaving the Navy early, and try to do things right with my family, try to do things right with the church, So God showed me along the way, just understanding the gospel message, theology, and I'm still a learned man, I learned to humble myself, just continue to be a learned person, I finally, even at 15 years as a Christian, because I was in the oneness church for 15 years, I finally now got the theology right, the Trinity right, And one thing I always even encourage within the Christian brothers is, be patient with everyone. All of our learning curves are different, Eventually they'll get it. Just be patient with them and it will come to them naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, brother, that was my journey, brother, and 20, well, I'll be 21 years this November coming up as a Christian, and it's been a wonderful ride. Even through the ups and downs, I have learned the mercy of God. I learned God's grace, and even His chastisement. When there are times I fell short, but I learned along the way how I can have the relationship with God. I can bring those problems up, and He still comforted me. He healed me. Another one thing I'll say, I've been praying for my family for 20 years. One of my cousins in Bangladesh, he gave his life to Christ. He found out about my story. He reached me. I haven't heard from him for 20 years. 2 years ago, I went on a 15-day water fast, just praying for the body of Christ, for the church, for my family. All of a sudden, day 4 of my fast, I get a call from I got a text from through Facebook Messenger. He said, "Brother, I've been trying to find you. It's me, Akbar." I'm like, okay, so I contact him. He said he wanted to know about my story. He says, "I'm having these problems with these imams in Bangladesh." Same thing. These imams are not telling them the truth. They're not telling them the hadith story. So he still told me that. I said, "Brother, whatever the family say about you," he says that I still love you. I appreciate that from him, because I know they're still open-minded Muslims. He says the youth of the Muslims in Bangladesh, there are a lot of hungry people, that want to know the truth. So I told him about my story. So as I shared my story, he says, "You know what? Can I share something with you?" I said, "Sure." He said that the day that we talked 2 years ago, he said 5 years prior, he said he had a vision. He didn't know what it was. He said, "In this vision, I saw this man. He looked like a prophet. I couldn't see his face. The face was glowing," he said. I said, "Okay, go on." I saw this man that looked like a prophet. He said he just got up on the mountain and went up to the sky. I said, "Brother, if you tell that to the rest of the Christians, you know what they will tell you? You probably saw the Messiah." So I encouraged him that, to read the scripture. I got him connected with the pastor in Bangladesh, got him a Bengali reading Bible. He starts reading that. But for something just changed my life. He always looked up to me as a big brother. So 2 weeks later, he's like, "Brother, just hearing your story and the testimonies and what you told me about my vision, I give my life to Christ." So like, all I could do is just thank God, but I still connected him with the pastor so he can understand the Bible,
Hmm.
understand the baptism. And here I am trying to pray for my family somewhere in the States. But no, I got a cousin in a Muslim country that just gave his life to Christ, and so he's just keeping the area where he lives at in Bangladesh is a lot of hardliner Muslims. So he tried
Hmm.
keeping the low.
Hmm.
I said, just keep going the word of God. When the right time comes, when God gives you the encouragement, eventually, you don't want to just hide it. God said, "If you're ashamed of me," He says, "I'll be ashamed of you in front of my Father." So, but I'm praying for you, and I understand your situation. But He said He is being used in ways to make Muslims think over there. So I'm happy about what God is doing on those part of the world, brother.
Yeah, it
So,
is. And yeah, we want all our brothers to be safe. But yeah, you can, just by asking questions and so on, you can get a lot of people thinking about some issues. So that's what I tell people, especially if they're in a dangerous environment. They're like, how do I get this across? And I say, well, instead of coming as an argument saying, "Hey, this is why your position is false," it's "Hey, I was reading this verse. It says Christians are supposed to judge by the gospel. Why are Christians? What do we know? Why Christians are supposed to judge by the gospel, not by the Quran? Why would that be?" You just ask a question for clarification and so on, and you can still get the information into people's heads. Anyway, that's yeah, awesome story. Thank you for
amen.
sharing all that with us. Um, especially
Absolutely.
the conversion, and I've heard the similar stories about family reactions and so on. It's fortunate that we live in a time where people don't just chop your heads off and so on for leaving Islam. But yeah, the normal reactions, the most common ones I hear are either family tries to win them back to Islam, or as soon as you announce it, they say, "We're done with you. Stay away from us." It's one of those. And so, usually some combination. Sometimes there'll be family members who are like, "Hey, just stay away from me until you're a Muslim again." But then also, other family members trying to win the person back and so on. And then, then you'll have the family members who the relationship's a little strained, but they don't like cast you out and say, you're still our relative and so on. So we like you. So yes, and this is all part of how Islam pressures people into staying in Islam. Like we talked about, how hard it would be for a wife who has a Muslim husband and Muslim children, and they go to the mosque and everything. How difficult it is for her to just say, "Actually, I believe that Muhammad is a false prophet, and I'm going to follow Jesus now." Very, very, very difficult. But it's true of pretty much. It's true of pretty much every Muslim. It's built into it's built into your thinking. Because Christians, we preach the good news. We preach the good news. Believe in Jesus, And when a Muslim is hearing, hey, there's this thing that I know I'm not supposed to do, associate a partner with Allah, and saying Jesus is Lord is the worst of all possible sins. So telling me to say this thing, which is a one-way ticket to hell, say Jesus is Lord, one-way ticket to hell, and I'm going to have to give up my family and may get my head chopped off if these Dawa guys get their way. And so it's like, wait, that's the good news? Because it sounds like really, really bad news.
It's really another thing I forgot to mention too, brother. Like they hit a lot of stuff with the translation. Like when I started reading the different translation, sadly they lie a lot of us, but I think on the Sahih International translation, literally gives a perfect explanation in Surah 931. They said they take their rabbis and their monks as lords besides Allah and Jesus. When I saw, here I am, I'm using my common sense. Wait a minute, Allah and Jesus? And I'm scrolling through Quran.com in the Arabic writing. Yeah, that's what it says. I connected, with Christian Prince and other people just to get their affirmation. And that's why I say I thank God for a lot of the Arab speakers as God's bringing them up too, because without them, the Muslims will continue to lie. Oh, no, that's not what it doesn't mean. So that's why it is becoming a problem with them in the community. So that's another thing that brought me up with that. And with the women too, I seen the abuse of the women in my family. I saw one of my cousins literally would fist fight with his father when my uncle through the marriage, like my mom's sister, she was abused by her husband, And it just shows that it's in our natural instinct about, women are protected. They're our moms, even in my instinct, I said I could never do that. I can't just treat them like they're crap, they're human beings, like don't they not think about how they see their mother, and I see within the community, they don't like if their moms get abused. Like I saw my own cousin with fist fight with his father if he's trying to touch my aunt,
Good boy.
So it just it's in their nature that who we are about as women too. But I just want them to be free from that. A lot of them are still stuck in it, and that's what I do. Over the years, I said, what can I do for you, Lord? I seen like you and Brother Nabil. I was mentioning earlier that you guys were going to college in Norfolk in Virginia. And there were times I'm like, man, when I got there, I wish I would have met you guys. Because when I got there, when I first time saw Nabil Qureshi in 2005 sharing his testimony, I was so happy, like, wow, another American, I said, how could it be a country that used to be East Pakistan coming together as brothers in Christ now, like, oh man, I cry to this day. Like I wish I had the opportunity to meet him, but I thank God for you guys. I thank God for your obedience to Jesus Christ that brought us a lot, that gave us the understanding, that gave us another perspective. And this is my prayer for the Muslims, that don't be afraid. Like, look, I've been trashing Allah for 20 years and Allah still didn't make me into a monkey or strike me down with lightning. They tell you for an ex-Muslim or a Jew, well, how dare you? You got to become a monkey. Well, I've been doing it for 20 years now. So far, nothing. So I'm safe.
Wait, hang on, though. Do you like bananas? Aha! Everyone see that?
Oh my God, brother!
Nice. Yes, that's interesting. So you converted in 2003, right?
2003.
Yeah. So that's a year before. That's a year before Nabil. Nabil became a Christian in 2004. So you were ahead of Nabil. I mean, my goodness, how you're talking about? Hey, wow, here's another guy who became a Christian. Wow, it'd be cool to know another guy. It's kind of funny how things have changed now everywhere. I tell people that all the time when I'm doing live streams with AP. I'm like, all you guys who are starting in apologetics now, dealing with Islam, you have no idea how good you have it now, because back then you had almost no ex-Muslims and almost no one knew anything about Islam. So when someone like me would say, hey, did you know that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl?
Yeah.
The standard Muslim response back then was, he's a liar, don't believe him. And guess what? If you're a regular person watching this, you've got this Christian saying this, and you got all these Muslim, knowledgeable Muslims saying, no, that guy's lying. Who do you believe? Well, you might just decide, okay, all the Muslims are saying this guy's lying. Or you might say, well, I just don't know. But it's just everything that was said. The Muslims would say, the Quran's been perfectly preserved right down to the letter. And we would say, no, it hasn't been. There was, I mean, the entire chapters were lost, large passages were lost, verses were eaten by a sheep. There are all these differences in the manuscripts and so on. But guess what? People don't, a regular person doesn't know any of that. They have no background in that. They don't have the sources. So who do you believe? I've got all these Muslims saying one thing and this guy or this ex-Muslim over here saying something else. Who do I believe? And so you can never kind of prove your point. You can never prove a point. And so it just took year after year after year of people putting the sources in front of people, showing people, that people finally start catching on. And now when people are getting involved in apologetics or polemics dealing with Islam and so on, it's a completely different world, because now the Dawah guys have been forced to admit all these things. And so they'll still call you liar, but not about all the main things that we've been pointing out for years. So it is it's a hard road, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end to see so many people leaving Islam, coming to Christ, and so on. All right, let's take a couple super chats real quick, and then we'll share any final thoughts we have. And here we got our mutual buddy Isa Kabir.
What's up, Isa?
Said sending support to buy Shahid, One Punch Man.
Come home, Isa. Come on, brother. We're waiting for you, bro.
Everyone's waiting for you, Isa.
You're better than Muhammad, brother. I'll not buy.
Ash says, looks like Mojab was right all along. You lost faith, and it was better for you. There's this famous clip where Muslims were saying that finding out about the holes in the narrative was causing them doubts, and he flips out, what doubts, what doubts? And he starts telling them, lose faith, it's better for you. It's like,
how dare you?
Yeah, just lose faith, it's better for you.
Like, I saw that skit with Lily Dawa. Oh, we must tell our brothers and sisters, many people are leaving Islam. Well, what the hell you guys are doing? Whenever we leave Islam, all you do is trash at the people that leave Islam. Why not try to win? I'm waiting for you. Win me back to Islam. Give me your best argument, Don't give me this Allah is one. And I forgot what you mentioned earlier too. Yeah, as I began to dig down, when I first saw you guys, I think you guys were on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And I'm excited, like, whoa, these guys are telling the truth. Like, I'm screaming on this. Like, I verified what these brothers are saying. I saw in the Quran, they're not lying, But because I understand from the spiritual warfare, the Bible reminds us, such as you were like them, and it's a hard part, when you come from the background, I have my little 2 cents with some of the Muslims, but God even sometimes trying to convict my heart too, come just use the word against it. So I began to do that. I remember back in the early days, I'll put out all these violence from what the Muslims are doing, and I just saw a lot of my relatives were getting mad about it, So my approach were wrong at that time, but I grow and learn. So what I do is I bring the sources. Hey, what do you guys think? I bring the video and I bring the sources that matches what they're doing, and that's the difference, And these people that try to attack me, saying about, like I mentioned about the violence verse, it's important to read it in context. You can put it side by side. I say, okay, you bring your violence verse, I'll bring the one that you say about our violence verse. We'll look at the Quran and look at the behavior that Muhammad is doing. I mean, come on now. This guy says go slaughter them, kill the Christians and Jews, get rid of the Jews and the Christians across the Arabian Peninsula. That's a pure hatred word right there. That's pure racism from Muhammad's move right there. He's doing that out of racism. He just want to Islamicize the whole world. That's their whole goal. No wonder there's no preaching behind it. Whenever I go back to Muhammad's word, I say, what wisdom is he saying? All Allah is doing is complaining throughout the whole Quran. I bring them the truth, but every time I tell them, they just don't want to believe it, And I'm just paraphrasing it from the Quran, All Allah is doing is complaining. That's what it sounds like, I bring you the truth. I bring you a clear Quran. Okay, so what do I need the tafsirs for? They think that, oh, you never was a Muslim. See, you never read the tafsir. You didn't read the Sharia code. Dude, how many books do you want me to jump? If the Quran
is funny.
A book.
No, it's just funny how they'll say, "Oh, convert to Islam. It's so simple," and someone just recites the Shahada, Allahu Akbar, Takbir. You see, this is the proof of Islam. And then when someone leaves Islam, it's like, "Oh, what kind of Muslim were you?" And "Oh, you couldn't recite the entire Quran from memory." And so, wait a minute, these are the requirements for being a Muslim? I thought it was just reciting this simple sentence. That's what you do to kids on the street, and then say they're Muslims. Wild stuff. Yeah, simply the truth. The UK here says, "Hi, David and Emmanuel. Glad to hear that you followed your heart, Emmanuel, and responded to Jesus when he shone a light on you and knocked at the door of your heart. May God bless you both." Uh,
Hallelujah. Glory to
thanks.
Jesus. Amen.
Yeah, and going back to what you were just saying about the Dawa guys, and you're saying, "Hey, you show me what your evidence is if you want me to convert back." It's amazing because I keep talking about this with I literally have no idea what they could possibly argue right now,
They
because
can.
all the arguments that they were using for the past 3 decades, they now acknowledge that the scientific miracles, that's been debunked. It was all made up. The perfect preservation, they now acknowledge it was all made up. It was all a lie. So I'm like, all of your arguments that you used for decades you now acknowledge were based on pure deception. So what do you even argue now? And I was actually excited when I saw Muhammad Hijab on Towards Eternity, it's a Muslim channel, but he was on there and I said, what is the evidence? Why should people believe in Muhammad? I was like, finally, now I can hear, after all these arguments fell apart, now I can hear what your actual case now is for Islam. And he said, well, Islam teaches monotheism. This must be true. This must be true. And it's like,
Okay. Everybody else can believe in one God. Like,
yeah.
like,
His second argument, his other main argument, he had two main arguments. One, Islam teaches one God. Okay, that's called monotheism. That gives you no reason to believe in Islam. Islam is a big package deal. It's a lot more than just monotheism. But his number two argument was Muhammad's character shows that he was a true prophet. I'm like, are you kidding me? You back to this? Because that was an argument. That's why we started bringing up the issue with Muhammad and Aisha. It wasn't just look, your prophet's a pedophile. It wasn't that. It was, they came with the argument Muhammad's character is so impeccable and perfect. The only explanation for this guy's supernatural moral perfection is that he's a prophet. So we start looking it up. Wait a minute, he did this, he did that. He took the wife of his own adopted son. What are you talking about? This guy seems like a horrible individual. And so yeah, and so it's just amazing. So they stopped using that. And now all of a sudden, they have to abandon the scientific miracles argument. They have to abandon the perfect preservation. They have to abandon all these arguments. And now what? Now you're circling back. You're circling back to the arguments that got destroyed 20 years ago. So it's like this big cycle. You wonder if like 20 years from now, they're all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, and because of the scientific miracles of the cross, you guys just going to keep cycling through bad arguments that have been debunked, and then you'll ignore them for 20 years until no one takes them seriously anymore and no one studies them. And then, now they're ignorant about this again. I can use it over again, even though we know it's not true. Anyway, it's this weird stuff.
coming with the Zakir. I'm telling you, John chapter number 5.
Yeah. By the way, look, it's similar with Zakir Naik. If you look at his channel now, he has trouble getting 2,000 or 3,000 views per video now. This was their most popular guy for so long. And yeah, anyway, he's been replaced by, Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah. Good trade.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
Beck says, glad to have you, brother. When you speak of the Navy, it speaks to me because I know someone who doesn't know God yet, but in you, I believe it's coming. God bless you.
Appreciate it. All glory to Jesus. All glory to him.
Big Rig says, why would you leave? Don't you want a woman that looks like a skeleton? Bone marrow isn't appealing to you? So Big Rig here is, everyone is talking about these.
I thought about that, but hey, one woman's already hard enough.
Yeah. So Big Rig is talking about these hadiths where Muhammad would, he noticed his followers liked really pale women, so he just kept emphasizing how pale, and then he got to the point where they're so pale their skin is see-through, and you can see their marrow on their bones, and apparently this is really appealing to his followers, but everyone else is looking at this going, I don't know, if I saw a girl whose skin was see-through and I could see her bone marrow.
What the heck is that? Like, the heck no. Oh, can I tell you this? I forgot to mention too. You know how they said that Islam never owned black slaves? That's another that bothered me when I saw Muhammad owning black slaves, and they were racist against that. Because I remember in our community, I never seen a lot of African American Muslims, but we had this one African American Muslim in our mosque at the time. And one day we had a big meeting. He literally shared his story, saying, "You know what? I feel like nobody likes me here. I think there's some racism." And I used to see how much they hated black, even within the community. They say black people are cursed people. So for a long time, I kind of carried that mindset too, because growing up in the inner city, I got picked on being in a predominant African American community. So I thought I had every excuse. Oh, Allah said black people are cursed people, so screw them. I would say all kinds of bad words at them,
Hmm.
But of course, over time, I have friends from all walks of life, but because at the time when I got picked on at that time, so my animosity went towards the black people. And since using the Quran and the Hadith, say, oh, because you're a cursed people, you're a nobody, you know, they said they're not even meant to be Muslims. They're just slave owners. They just have a thing with being white. I think there's another source too. I don't remember which. It's not in the Hadith, but it's one of the other tradition where it says that if you call anyone that calls Muhammad black, you could be
Yeah,
punished by
that
that.
yeah, Sharia. No, that was a death penalty. Yeah, under Sharia, that was a death penalty. Saying Muhammad was black was a death sentence. They chop your head off. They chop your head off for it. Yeah. So I mean, and the reason that's relevant is, I mean, in the 1960s when Islam was spreading in the African American community, the message was, hey, Islam is the religion of equality for all people and so on. And people bought into that. But you can, to this day, guys, just look up racism in the Muslim community or racism in the Middle East and so on. It's really, really a problem. And even there have been Muslims like in the U.S. complaining about racism, like in the Muslim Students Association and so on, how they're treated different. Even in college, you're treated differently if you're a black Muslim than if you're like an Arab Muslim.
They know this too. Even when I was in Dubai, when we went there for port visits in Dubai, like it's sad too. Like I seen even people from our community, a lot of the Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, they work like slaves. Black people, even for them being black Muslims, they put them in a different category of how they treat them, or being in a social status area. You can see that there's tension. That's why, like, why are you guys even following this religion? This guy hated your people. Allah hated black people. Gosh, there's this book I came across. I didn't read the book, but it was a scholar from Africa. I forgot his name. It was about the historicity when Islam came to Africa, and a lot of like testimonies of how the Arabs treated the black people. So I remember I brought this up in my YouTube channel like a couple of years ago. Like I'm gonna have to look back. I forgot the name of the author. I'll probably find out who it was, but he has some good historicity of how when the Arab Muslims came to Africa and how they treated them.
Mhm. Yeah. Beatrice here says Muslims have such a problem with God taking the form of man. He can do what he wants. Yeah, it is wild in Islam. I mean, Allah has to descend from his throne to the lowest heaven just to hear prayers. He can't hear prayers. So he's hard of hearing. He has to get really close to prayers to hear them and so on. But they'll have a problem with it's interesting because it's like what their real problem is with God having perfect attributes. They need God to have limited attributes because if you have a God whose justice is perfect, then all sin has to be punished. If you have a God whose love and mercy are perfect, then he's going to want to forgive. And so if you have a God with those perfect attributes, what does he do with a human sinner?
Exactly.
One of his attributes is saying, punish that person. The other attribute is saying, no, love and forgive that person. What do you do? And so the solution in Islam is to just reduce God's attributes. He's not really that loving. He's a little bit loving, and he's not perfectly just. He's a little bit just. And so, we solved the problem. And so when you're saying no, God's attributes are perfect, his justice is perfect. So his justice demands that all sin be punished, and his love and mercy are also perfect. So he does everything. He does whatever it takes to forgive the people. How do you reconcile that? Well, you reconcile that by God entering creation, taking the punishment that other people deserve upon himself. And therefore, guess what? All sin has been punished. Justice is perfect. And yet he's done everything necessary to forgive people. So his love and mercy are perfect. And they flip out and lose their minds over that idea. What is your actual problem? Your real problem is with a perfect God. Your real problem is with a perfect being.
I forgot to mention that, and that tells how I got the understanding why he died first. Because, of course, I would argue, so wait a minute, isn't it my responsibility for my sin? But as I understood the wisdom of God, and I recognized the love why he did, like, wow, it makes sense. Something has to be paid for, like. So when I understood the wisdom of his death and resurrection, because we always like to point out, oh, look, he died, he's not God. No, 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 you're missing out. He says, I'm going to die, and 3 days later, I'm going to resurrect. So when I understood the wisdom of God, like, oh, that makes sense. No matter what happens, yes, he did what he had to do. It's like God didn't have to do what he did, but it just shows his love in order for us to break that sin. Now I see why because he is the perfect sacrifice. Because I went back to the Old Testament when I was reading the whole Old Testament, why he chose Isaac. And I know as a Muslim they argue about Abraham is it should have been Ishmael because he's the oldest son. But what they fail to see is that if they're to pay attention, God said it is through your wife Sarah. So this is how I begin to understand the wisdom that marriage is a big thing. And God said, He said he only recognized through his wife Sarah. There's gonna be where the seed comes from. Like, oh, now
Hmm.
everything's starting to click now. That's why I encourage the Muslims just to read it, just see where the flow goes, see what God is trying to do. And whenever people are sinning too, I love the fact that how God, even in the Old Testament, He'll still forgive you if you just repent. I'll bring you back to the fold also too. But now it's even more beautiful seeing through the Messiah. Like now I see, Lord. See, no matter what happens, death even cannot control you. But you did what you have to do, Father, to redeem us. And I understand now. That's true love. It's something about that love that just makes you draw you to follow Him. Like, oh my gosh, I want to follow you, Lord. It's not about me anymore. Like John the Baptist says, I must decrease while He must increase. And it's just wow. I just love God's wisdom, bro. Every time I read the Bible, brother, it's just I learn something new. And every now and then I'm not sometimes I have to explain about the Quran, or I'll do some little jokes when I'm playing along. I'll use the Zakir Naik voice as the author of Allah when I'm reading the Quran, like, and I
Yeah.
get a headache, brother. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I want to, you know, to be funny, using the Ali Dawa voice to, to
well,
read the Quran. Right.
hey, hey, brother, Allah says I chose you as the prophet.
Oh, you who believe, yeah. Oh, you who believe, yeah. Fight them who ain't the believers, yeah. You have to kill them in the name of Allah, innit? It'd be funny.
And then me with the Zakir Naik voice, Jibril, why are you trying to choke me? I cannot take it anymore.
That would be good. We might have to do a little play, reenacting all these things, but with all the famous Dawa guys.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
Beatrice here says, "What church were you going to in Japan? I have family there." Well, if you were just going to visit it probably that was a long time ago, Beatrice. So,
Oh yeah, that was back in 2000. Well, I went back to Japan. My daughter was born in Yokosuka Naval Base, so I was there my first term from 2002 to 2006. So at the time, there are a small community of church. We have like military, a lot of veterans that's preaching out there, especially in Okinawa. Whenever we used to go pick up the Marines in Okinawa, at the time I was going to a UPC church in Okinawa at the time, but there are other churches too, like there are Baptist churches that's run by a lot of veterans. And God is using a lot of the veterans that's still preaching in Japan. A lot of them married into the having Japanese wives. And then when I went back again um, to Japan in 2011 to 2014, I was going to uh, at the time I was still a oneness at the time, and I was going to a UPC church in by Yokota Air Base by Yokota. I would go out there. So over time, brother, as I began to study theology, I seen the heresies from the oneness side. There's time, when I was a oneness brother, I felt like I was a Muslim all over again. Like,
mm,
what the heck? All these certain rules, that uh, even as a guy, you gotta have certain dress code. You can't have a beard. I'm like, where are you guys getting all this? I don't see that in the scripture. That. But the problem that I had was what was the turning point was I remember the pastor was preaching saying, you cannot go to heaven without a pastor. That was a red flag for me. I remember I
mm,
just walked in the middle of the service. I just walked out and never looked back. What he did was, see, a lot of times, a lot of the, and I can't speak on behalf of a lot of oneness, even within certain oneness group I met, I could see that they can align with the Trinitarian side. What I've seen, what brought me near to Trinitarian side also, because sometimes oneness will use certain arguments that sounds like Trinitarian when they try to explain the nature of God. So I said, so where's the separation coming from? The UPC church, they do it even worse too. They'll try to silence their members not to fellowship with Trinitarians. So I'm just like, so how are we supposed to grow as the body of Christ? How can we learn? So they you almost use the same Islamic mindset. They'll use like, oh, be careful of the many voices. They might try to turn you away. They use the same Islamic mindset that Trinity. They believe in three gods. But when I talk to a lot of Trinitarians, oh, I get it now. It took me forever, but I think if more the body of Christ, if they just take a sit down, just try to pay attention and listen. I think now it's gotten better. The more I hear from you, brother, and who was right? There's a couple top scholars that I've I've heard explain the Trinity. I think it has gotten better over the years. Maybe back in the days because people just didn't know how to explain it. So this is why I was stuck with it. You
Well, it's
know.
not. It's usually. I mean, if you're learning theology in church and so on, it's you're talking to believers and explaining the theology. It's not. It's not meant to respond to criticisms and objections and so on. So people just aren't prepared for it, and that's why, light at the end of the tunnel kind of situation. It's Christianity was so successful in the West that
Yeah.
it got to the point where everyone around you for centuries mostly was almost all Christians. And
Yeah.
therefore, people aren't challenging you on your Christianity. They might be challenging you on your denomination or your view or something like that, but they're not challenging you on Christianity. And so eventually when we encounter the rest of the world and all these different ideas, well, you spent centuries not emphasizing how to respond to objections, and now you're being confronted with objections. Whereas
Yeah.
in the beginning, when Christianity was spreading, apologetics was built into it. Right? In the first century, you're not going to convert to Christianity unless you have a really good reason for converting to Christianity. So because you're going to face persecution and your family abandoning you and so on. And so for you to even make that decision to follow Christ, you have to have a really good reason to follow Christ. And so when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, why'd you follow Christ?" "Oh, I can tell you exactly why I followed. I can tell you exactly why I followed Christ. I can tell you
Exactly.
exactly why I believe this," right? Later on, when, people in the West are growing up in a Christian area and you go to church and you understand that you're a Christian, that was never an issue for you. You
Yeah.
didn't become a Christian because, you didn't become a Christian because you had all these great
Exactly.
reasons to, and therefore you're like, I don't know why I'm a Christian. And so it's actually good that we're challenged because
Exactly.
it's making people learn apologetics. So these are actually, that's the positive side of all this.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Absolutely, my brother.
Fox here says, if there was wisdom in beards, all ghosts would be prophets. Armenian proverb. So they're liking that you don't have a beard, looks like.
I usually grow a beard, but I feel like I don't know. I still have these baby hairs growing. I'm in my 40s too, so I've been trying to shave more so I can get a little nice lineup in.
Yeah, mine is still not great. Like I can't even grow the cool long. I would totally have one of those cool long beards. I can't. It kind of grows straight out like this, like a caveman type thing. So I keep it kind of short. But I was in mid 30s, like before a couple of big gaps filled in. I had like a big gap here and a big gap down here, and so on.
Man, I'm trying to get a connect. I got one side. It's not connecting here. Like,
AF Iron says, admire your conversion story, brother. You've done amazing and are an inspiration, except the Navy part. Go Air Force.
oh, the
Ooh.
Air Force. You guys with your nice hotels. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie.
Yeah.
Air Force got a good living. Every time I go to the Air Force base, even right now, I don't live far from Fort Lewis. Like their quality of living is pretty good. I would say Navy is second. Like it's been pretty good. Yeah, I can't complain about the Air Force. Yeah, you guys got it good.
It's better Christian USA dominate world than mine. So Petsu here doesn't wants the U.S. to dominate the world and not not his country. Michael says, thank you, Mr. Shahid, for speaking out about Hamtramck, Michigan. You should have joined the Army, lol. Why has everyone got a problem? Everyone's got a Okay, okay. The Islam thing's one thing, the Christianity thing's another, but the branch of the military, that's the real
What is
issue.
the problem? I told them so many times, you do not go fight for the kafir.
Oh, here you go. Here you go. Mythical Elliptical says, so cool to see a fellow Navy veteran on here, was stationed in Mayport, deployed to Africa. God bless, brother.
BM3, oh, he's a bosun mate. I'm a ABF1. I was an aviation bosun mate field.
Yeah,
So
my dad was a CB.
a CB, yeah, they're
Yeah.
cool people. I worked along with the CBs when I was in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
Cool people, man. A lot of great people, man. Just that I
He
work
actually,
with.
yeah, he actually joined the military. He got busted for his second drug offense,
Oh,
and his first was he was only 17, and then so that ended up sliding, and then he got caught with, I think he said 6 pounds or 8 pounds or something like that. He got caught with 6 pounds of weed or something like this. And back then they would say, look, you can either go to jail or join the military. Back then they would do it. And And now now they don't do it anymore because it's considered, oh, but you're taking criminals and so on. It's like, well, some of the people who are committing crime just need like some direction and order in their lives, and then they become and then they
things, yeah.
yeah. So it's actually I think it's actually better. In fact, I know see because I've been to prison. There's lots of guys in there who are bad and they're criminals. There are other guys who made a stupid mistake. So they still got their entire they're redeemable. And so I like the ideas of kind of following people and saying, hey, do you want to do something else in life? I would give you the opportunity. But yeah.
A lot of it turned out great. I came across those folks, and they would share their stories to the junior sailors, how they overcame. They have those little drug charges too, and the judge gave them a secretary if they just serve. They will take that away, and eventually, as they serve, it does. It makes you better human beings. I know there's a lot of when I left the Navy, I don't know, all these wokeism is trying to infiltrate the military. That's what I worry about, because we try to avoid all of that. I wish they kept the whole "don't ask, don't tell" policy. Things just become messy. And I'm not gonna lie, I was getting uncomfortable. They try to find ways to integrate some of the alphabet people with, in the birthing area where it's mostly straight guys, So it's impossible to where they try to force their view, but eventually, we see the mess that it turned out. I think with the whole Dylan Mulvaney with Budweiser, I think that gave a wake up call to how strong that there's a lot of conservative or libertarian that they're not the minority, they're our majority, and it will hurt their investment, and that they keep pushing their agenda like that. So I feared that for our military too, because how are we going to get the job done? I mean, China and Russia was making fun of it because the Navy made an ad about a girl who grew up with two mom, me and my mommy and my other mommy, whatever that commercial they made, like
Powerful.
what?
Powerful. There was I don't know if you saw it. There was a hilarious tweet that was going around, but it was from a Muslim, and he was sharing a story in the UK, and he said there was a kid there was a kid in school, and he was talking to the teacher about his two moms, and they thought, wow, great, and they started like celebrating him and wanting him to share more about his two moms, because they thought, finally, this is the bridge to the LGBTQ community. And it turns out the dad just had two wives. And the Muslims were cracking up about this. They're like, oh, you guys thought you'd built the bridge. Yeah.
Aisha and Malisha.
MMA lover says, Allah snack bar. Indeed. Allah snack bar. Celeria says, posted in a reply on the video in question, but you were saying you didn't know where Eden was, Dr. Wood, east of Kuwait, north of Bahrain, under H2O. Yeah, just not sure about anything going back that far.
Yeah.
Caleb here, didn't leave a comment. Thanks for the super chat, though. War says, going to heaven or hell is predetermined in Islam. Yeah, That's it is. Right. And I mean, you've got passages saying, if Allah has decided you're going to hell, then you could be living as a devout Muslim your entire life, but then right beforehand, you're gonna turn away or something like that, and you're gonna go to hell. And if Allah has predestined you for heaven, then you could live your entire life forever as the biggest pagan in the world, and then somehow right beforehand, then you're going to become a good Muslim.
And you probably know this story too. Like my father would say, if you know you're about to die, you have to make sure you have to say as fast as possible say La ilaha illallah before you die. Maybe you go to heaven. I mean, who's got to be in the right mind? You got to say La ilaha illallah before your death comes. Like, oh my gosh.
If Momo is only 1.8 inches, why does the goat scream so loud? This is one of the Apostate Prophets fans coming over here. Don't know if you followed the recent debate, but
I see that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. See, these stuff are important. I love these kinds of that people think about, with marrying young girls, that's why I was disgusted. Like, how can they, oh my gosh, man, these things they don't think about, the physiology, the cervix, and
yeah. So guys, the clip is on my Twitter. I put the short clip on my Twitter page. It is an interesting point, and some nice people will be watching this just because it's a person giving his testimony who may not follow the rougher stuff. But recent debate between Andrew Wilson and Muslim Lantern. Muslim Lantern believes that Muhammad did consummate the marriage with Aisha when she was 9 years old, but he said not in a way that harmed her. And Andrew Wilson's response to that was, Christian debater, his response to that is, okay, the length of the vaginal canal of a prepubescent 9-year-old girl is about 2 inches. So if Muhammad, so take your pick. If Muhammad didn't damage her, then his penis must have been smaller than 2 inches. If you don't believe that, then if it's bigger, then it was damaging her. So take your pick. And it was very awkward. But I shared the clip and sort of zoomed in on Sneeko's face, because as Andrew's talking about this, Sneeko's giggling and laughing, and it's like, wait a minute, you're a Muslim?
I want to know who likes Sneeko, man. Like, if these guys are watching, like, you guys, I'm pretty sure at least Sneeko is starting to see a lot of things like, wait a minute, this is not the Islam that I signed up for, you know, like you guys need to wake up, and they are lying to you. Like, this is what I was taught, to lie. They don't tell you the full truth. They don't tell you to question these things. You need to question everything. Because I'm telling you, back home, like, I always tell people this, say if you and me were walking down the street, see, the Muslims will be nice to you. Oh yeah, Allah is good. We respect you. And they say, I'm right by myself. Hi, do you respect me too? Guess what? I left Islam. Oh, they're gonna give me the most dirtiest look, because we got to make sure we don't mess up our plan. I'm trying to get some more Caucasians become Muslims, you know? Mm-hmm. How dare you, brown guy? Like,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go ahead and close out now, but how can people follow your stuff? I do have a link to your YouTube channel down in the description box. So anyone wants to, Emmanuel does have a YouTube channel, guys, so you can click on that and follow him there. But how else can people follow what you got going on?
They can find me on TikTok, so I begin to do more on the TikTok side too. I do a lot of reporting too.
Like, that's actually more relevant, because they're kind of a bunch of us who are holding it down over on YouTube. We've just been doing that for a long time. We know how this works. But you have a lot of Dawa guys who are going on the TikTok. They know it's a younger generation over there, and they know they don't have it. They're always looking, again, they're looking for that atmosphere of ignorance. Now, there are a lot of young people there who don't know anything about Islam, and that there aren't a lot of Christians over there making content over there. So yeah, very, very important to be on TikTok.
I for a long time, because I was so skeptical about the Chinese communists. I don't want them to get my information. But eventually I was convinced. You know, I said, let me give it a try. I realized, wow, there was a lot of youth there. You know, so they're getting away, as there wasn't many ex-Muslims on that side. So now you got myself and more other people are coming in. So I do a lot of content when it comes to like the persecution report, because that's something near and dear to me, because, not a lot of people are talking about that. And I use a lot of the articles. I remember, I think when you and brother from Jihad Watch, gosh, I swear that my brain fog is kicking in on me.
Robert Spencer.
Robert Spencer. Thank you, brother. Brother Robert. Yeah. And I remember you mentioned about, if you guys can use the articles to help reach, and I got encouraged by that, because after leaving the military and what I've seen on the other side of the world, and that's something near and dear to me, because more people need to hear that. So I use a lot of his articles to let people know what's going on with the other side, what Muslims are doing. And of course, I bring up my experience. I talk about a lot of the Hadith passages. I bring the Quranic passages. I might try to make it to a joke out of it. Use my Zakir Naik author, like as Allah. But I'm there I connect with some of the brothers in Christ out there too, to be in the panel, have these discussions with Muslims, or sharing my testimony out there. So I'm on TikTok and YouTube. You could just type in under Emmanuel Shahid, and you'll find me there.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So thanks to Brother Emmanuel here for joining us and sharing his story. You can follow his work, and thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.
Awesome, bro. Thank you, brother.